What is the fastest way you've lost a friend? Went on a double date and she was super rude to the guy I set her up with. He was a friend of mine too. She was so rude I told her the next day that I was disgusted by her behavior and I didn't want to be friends with someone who treats others so badly. We never hung out again. Good for you. Two friends got into a fight and stopped talking to each other. I made them realize their mistakes and brought them together. Then they unfriended me. Yay. Good deeds to reap benefits. First, your username. Amazing. Second, I've been told that doing something good should be done because it's right, not because you gain something. That helped me come to terms with unexpected and hard to swallow outcomes in the past when I've been crap all over. Rather than live in the dorms our freshman year of college, we decided to share an apartment across the street from our department's building on campus. It was the worst, and killed off our years-long bestie friendship. Even though I don't have personal experience with this, I've seen a few couples break up after moving in with each other. So now I suggest to try and live with each other before getting married. H. Not just one friend. Multiple of my closest friends. If you play with fire, you will get burned. I miss them dearly and I try to live a better life every day for them. This one hits home. My best friend in high school started drinking heavily at the beginning of junior year. Then he started doing coke, which turned into crack. After we were done with high school he switched over to H and pills. He passed away at 19 years old. It was awful watching the progress of all of these drugs taking away my best friend slowly. I'm sorry you had to go through this as well. Told her that her boyfriend was cheating on her and I saw it with my own eyes. She said I was a jealous liar and a bad friend. Weeks later he dumps her because he was cheating on her. She still never spoke to me again. Literally went from really close friends to never speaking or seeing each other ever again in a single conversation. She probably realized her mistake and was just too embarrassed or hot-headed to admit she was in the wrong. It always sucks when you get someone like that. His family was in dire financial straits. I loaned him over $10,000. A couple of years later, he asks me about this car he really wants to buy and I suggested that maybe he might consider paying me back before spending on classic collectible cars. He went off on a rant and said that his wife, since the dire strait, they got divorced, stole the money from me and he was innocent and all sorts of crap. That was the last I ever heard of him. Shame. We were as close as brothers for a very long time. His ex-wife is still a good friend though. Never loan money to a friend unless there's a contact or you make peace with the fact that you don't want it back. My friend never liked my girlfriend, now wife, and I never really knew why. He was a good friend but I really liked this girl and he was starting to distance himself from me it seemed. One day me and him were hanging out and he was bitching about how he didn't think my girlfriend was a good fit for me. I really liked her and I kept pushing him to tell me what's up until he finally said to me, what if you're the last one in your family to have kids? Your bloodline will no longer be white. I laughed and thought he was joking. He was serious. Jesus Christ, that's horrible. Great reason to unfriend. WTF can you do with such people? I had an online friend who I'd spoken with on the phone on numerous occasions. She always said she felt like she had known me for years. But then I told her I didn't like Nancy Grace. I thought Nancy Grace had made a living feeding off of the corpses of murdered children. Never spoke to me again. You're much better off without them. Thought they were a pretty fun person upon our first set of interactions. Then, the second time around, they started things off with, well, now that we're acquainted, you should know that I consider myself a Renaissance man. Proceeded to give an I am very much spiel about his various accomplishments and enlightened interests that absolutely killed any potential friendship. Opened up to him about my struggles with depression. Following day he messaged me saying he couldn't have that much negativity in his life and couldn't continue being a friend. That really sucks. One of my close friends has really distanced herself from me since I shared that I was struggling. I'm sorry. I honestly have no idea. I bought a plane ticket to fly to see her and help her move our home state. I didn't want her to have to drive 18+ hours by herself. I spent 3 days hanging out in the city she lived in. We had a great time. We had dinner with her family the last night there, and she suddenly got weird. She shut me out completely. She didn't speak to me for the entire drive home. 18 hours in a car, in silence. She hasn't spoken to me since. I have no idea what I did. It's been almost 10 years and it still bums me out. She was my best friend too. Friends from middle school through high school. The guy progressively turned into an butthole through the years. He was super cool when it was just me and him hanging out, but was a complete dong when others were around by putting me down to try to make himself look better. Had a falling out right before high school graduation, and I figured it was for the best since we would be going to different colleges. Years later we ran into each other in our hometown during Christmas break and reconnected. Seemed like we picked up where we left off. Super cool when it was just us and we had a good time catching up. All of a sudden when we would hang out when other people were around, he would be the same butthole he was when I knew him in high school. He was basically the same person he was in high school except he picked up a drug habit. I tried giving it pass because I know how hard it is to keep friends around as you get older. But one night we got into a big argument and led to me kicking him out of my car. He ended up being extremely butthurt by it and wouldn't even respond to my calls or texts after that. I tried apologizing to the point that it felt like I was chasing him down. Then it occurred to me, why the frick am I practically begging this butthole to be friends with me when he's a piece of crap that is always treating me bad and he couldn't forgive me for one crappy thing I did? I'm so grateful he didn't get back to me. I understand it's good to keep friendships going, but why would you want a toxic one? I chalk it up to being young and dumb. But now I'm very careful with who I let into my life, and it's been great. Life has been so much better because of that former friendship, because it helped me vet out the bad and keep in the good. I can relate. I took her piece of candy when we were desk mates in 2nd grade. The teacher had to move us because she would talk to me ever again. Went the whole grade without her ever saying a peep to me. Dang piece of candy. Never underestimate the power of a Charleston chew. Well, friend. In early middle school I knew a guy who would beat up the people who picked on me. That was his job, not theirs. He was a grade A sucker, and I didn't have enough experience with people to realize it at the time. One day he got bored of our friendship mid-recess and refused to acknowledge I was talking to him. He spent the next half hour asking his other friends if they hear something, since all he hears is a worm. Him being one of my only friends. It was pretty crushing at the time. Looking back, crying about it and begging him to fricking notice me was a crap way to deal with the situation and fed right into his superiority complex. I'm sorry dude. I had this happen to me in the 6th grade. It definitely was a crushing moment for me since I had no other friends to hang out with. Luckily I moved and found a decent group of friends. Found out he was cheating on his wife of less than 2 years because they had grown distant after she had a baby. Who knew having a third life dropped into your life would cause things to change? I know both him and his side piece. They are both dead to me. I spent 3 years caring for and supporting her unconditionally, through good times and bad. When she was near bedridden with depression over her stagnant life and health problems, I encouraged her to go back to school. Well, she went back to school, and she made new friends. She then said we don't connect anymore and moved out. It was less than halfway through the first semester, and she blamed it on my grief over a death in the family. She broke up with her boyfriend. He was also part of the friend group for a few years. A week later she tried to force him out of the friend group by kicking him from all group messaging platforms because she was the one that introduced him to us in the first place. We refused to let her. She said I, the gay friend, only wanted him because I want to bang him. He came out as bi a few weeks before. Then she left and blocked us all from everything. We had been friends for like 4 years. Moving. Had developed some very close friendships at my previous job. When I left and moved 150 miles away, the friendships just vanished despite my attempts to stay in touch. Was pretty much ghosted. Did not even receive a message of condolence after my wonderful dad died in January, and I know they were told by a mutual friend of his passing. I learned from my first job at 16 that co-worker friends are friends of convenience, just like most school friends. Once that daily meetings place ends, so do most of the friendships. My cat died and I was devastated. Ex-friend saw me crying and went, "It's just an animal." Whatever. Pepe was just an animal. But it was that friend who was a massive B. Never spoke to her again. Number. There is no such thing as just an animal. One time a friend got mad at me for spending time with another friend who they didn't like. Instead of talking to me about it, they just wrote a passive-aggressive, patronizing, and overly dramatic journal about how I betrayed them on DeviantArt. I just blocked them and never spoke to them again, lol. Dodge a bullet, to be honest. I don't know, but I feel like the fact that it got thrown on DeviantArt adds a lot more context to the situation. Confided in my best friend that I'd been raped, sexually abused for a portion of my life. They were the only person I'd ever told in the 10 out of 17 years of my life it had been happening. Their response: "Why do you ruin things? You're peeing me off right now. Good night." I gave them a chance to take it back and apologize, to realize what they've just done, but they stood their ground and told me I was in the wrong for being mad at them and continued to accuse me of playing the rape card. Despite us being best friends and having to spend further time together in school and social events, I knew I could never really see them as a decent human being anymore, let alone a friend. Took me months to realize it wasn't my fault the friendship ended, and even now I still blame myself when I'm feeling crappy. I should say that it wasn't an out of the blue statement. Throughout the past year and a half I'd implied plenty times of the things that had been done to me, but he chose to ignore the subtle hints. I was too afraid to say it out loud. I finally worked up the courage to tell them, and that was their reaction. Had this friend I was super close with for about 7 years. I'm trying to get my life together and he fell into the world of drugs and was trying his best to drag me with him. I tried to keep him clean and help him out, but I could only handle so much of him. He started being late all the time. He was high no matter what, and there were times where he would make up obvious excuses to just not hang out. Even when we did hang out anyways, he would try to pressure me to hang out with his drug dealer and try stuff with him. I haven't spoken to my best friend at all in 3 months now. I wish I could have done more to stop this from happening, but I'm glad at the same time because I could have easily fell into the same hole as him. Good for you for trying to keep him clean. Unfortunately, some people don't realize what they're doing to themselves, or don't care. I'm sorry you lost a friend to drugs. I had this girl over at my place and we were watching a show. I was having period cramps and got myself a hot water bottle, which she then took from me because her hands were cold. She refused to give it back, saying that I'll be in pain with or without it, but if her hands get too cold, her skin will crack. They were incredibly rude to wait staff when we went out together. I was a waitress for years. I have no tolerance for that BS. Someone's true nature I revealed in their conduct to those they, wrongfully in this case, view as their inferiors. Not a friend worth having. He started shoplifting regularly and wanted me to promise I wouldn't tell. I didn't tell, but advised him to seek help, which he refused to do. She tried to convert me. I was already a freaking Christian, just not her sort. I went to her church one Sunday when I was visiting, because it was a new and big part of her life and I was trying to keep an open mind. But she set me up afterwards for an ambush by 4 of her friends, who hammered me with proof texts to show me what a pathetic excuse for a Christian I was. And she just sat there and let it happen, even when I was close to tears. I kind of ghosted her after that, which I'm a bit ashamed of, but I couldn't face another such encounter. I never saw her again. Jebus, that's rough. Good for you for staying away from that toxic person. Hey, I'm doing this mentorship thing. You should come and check it out. So I go to support her since she's having a hard go at things, only to find out it's a presentation to an MLM. Once I dropped her home, we never spoke again. She was jealous of my boyfriend, told me to break up with him or our friendship was over. I chose my boyfriend. I broke up with him a few years later and she tried to hook up with him, my ex, and I thought it was hilarious and still laugh about it. People, including me, always assume breakups are horrible and exes are the enemy. I think it's pretty funny that your ex sounds like a better friend than Ultimatum Girl. Had a friend from when I was 4 to 11. He started hanging out with this butthole kid who started corrupting him. One day my friend poured syrup in my hair and I kicked the frick out of him. We got suspended and we didn't talk much after that. Also not the fastest, but something I think about all the time. Had a friend all throughout high school. Really cool funny guy. We had all the same interests and mutual friends. We would hang out and wood shop and play Xbox all the dang time. But as soon as we graduated he stopped hanging out with anybody and everybody and started going to the gym 24/7 and got a GF to spend the rest of his spare time with. Became super flaky, super sad. He was one of the coolest dudes I knew. Got hit by some laced weed once. Ended up puking in my friend's flower garden for like an hour. Never saw the guy again despite being friends for years. Geez, not like you plan to barf in the flowers. By telling my mom about a fight that happened when we were all together. Apparently my mom isn't allowed to know about what happens when she's out of town. Friend has BPD and decided to drop me in a really rude way immediately after I helped them immensely with a huge coding project, effectively preventing them from failing. Having someone close to you with BPD can be very challenging. I have an immediate family member with it. I tried out for the swim team and not the tennis team like she did. I was a traitor and she turned most of our friends against me. Was friends with this girl for years. Her partner adored her. She begged him to propose and when he did she accepted. Used the deposit money for the flowers and stuff to fund her boozy nights out with her girlfriend. Led him along. Never told anyone. Tried to use me to stalk his page after the breakup. I got over that friendship pretty quick as one, she was a crappy person to do that to another human being too. She never told me crap and thought I'd happily go along with her stalking plan just to appease her. B, I'm not desperate, I have enough real friends to be used by a fake one. Oh, she also asked my daughter to be bridesmaid. Took her to dress fittings etc and then dropped her like a sack of crap and knew all along that my daughter would never be bridesmaid because the wedding wasn't happening. Wasting my time and my daughter's. Freaking idiotic woman. I hung around with my friend nearly every dang day, going to the beach, whatever, anything during freshman and sophomore year of high school. He got a job at a grocery store and met a girl. We all went to the fair because he wanted to introduce me to her. I still remember when we were saying goodbye near sunset, and they ran off gazing into each other's eyes like a movie scene. That was the last day I hung out with him. Randomly, maybe 4 years later during college I ran into him. He was getting married to her and was going to take a flight to visit her family in Chicago. He was freaking out because he realized he had never dated any girl, but her and college opened up the world to him. I would later find out that he freaking bailed on the fiancée, that is, left her hanging in Chicago. He didn't take the flight to visit her family and the wedding was called off. What a sick turn of events. Now former best friend of mine visits me after I got out of the hospital from a 5-month stay from a brain injury and steals from me thinking I wouldn't notice since he thinks I'm retarded now. Whoa. I've moved around a lot and distance is the true friend killer, so I'll skip all those. I made a really good friend last year. My boyfriend, this new friend, and myself were like the three musketeers. We did so much together. The friendship lasted about 9 months and then it ended with a single comment. My boyfriend was pretty convinced our mutual friend is gay and closeted. I was reasonably sure myself but felt there was no need for us to address it. We both got to come out on our own terms, and while I'd love to help someone be who they are, forcing it is terrible. Well, my boyfriend disagreed. We're all in our late 20s and he was sure he was doing the right thing by getting our friend to come out instead of waiting. One day we were eating lunch and he dropped a not so subtle hint that we thought he was gay. I watched my friend's face closely and when he understood what my BF was implying, his entire demeanor changed. You could essentially see the walls come up. He didn't answer and I changed the subject. Then our friend stopped talking to us completely. We used to work out at the same time and it was always our sort of meet-up place where we'd see each other, spill the tea, etc. I thought I'd be able to defuse the situation by talking with him some, but he started working out at a different time, rejected our attempts to hang out. I tried asking him about it and he made excuses. He made it apparent he was done with us. If I were a more confident person I'd have probably been more forceful about breaking through his defenses to repair the friendship, but one of my own personal demons is believing that no one actually wants to be my close friend. So when he was done with us, I interpreted it as an ineffable thing, validating my feelings, even if they were wrong. It happened in an instant. Complete severance. It put my head in a spin and it honestly put a strain on my relationship with my boyfriend because he was such an important part of our lives, and I'll admit it was nice having a mutual friend who could sometimes play buffer between us. I am sorry, but your BF is a dong. I was in butthole when I came home from college and was hanging out a friend from high school that had a girlfriend I didn't like. I felt she was bossy and he was just whipped. We were out drinking and he took a call from her, came back to the table and said she wanted him to leave. I was in butthole and said something like, when she says jump, do you even ask how high? He bailed, left me there, was my ride, and he was totally right to do so. I was a dong, and he wouldn't take my calls after that. I did try to apologize by voicemail, but never spoke to him again. It sucks when wake up calls hit you like that. What's the shittiest way a friend has shown you they weren't really your friend? Promised to invite me to a group outing, only to text me one day out of the blue that they already left, and oh well. From mutual friends who went on the outing, they told me that this friend never told them that I was invited. My best friend since middle school got me knocked unconscious after starting a confrontation with a large group of guys. Proceeded to tell everyone we worked with that I had started it. Few weeks later I had returned from a holiday to my home country and he had moved one of his friends into my room at the place we were renting. Never talked to him again. For some reason my brain switched since middle school within middle school, and I was trying real hard to figure out a reason that middle school kids would be renting a place together. Lied about me at our government job where I was investigated by the AG and ultimately caused me to leave a job and a boss I loved. She quit when we found out it was her who lied, as she knew my boss would con her butt. Oh, and I'm the one who got her hired. How do people just wake up one day and decide to do stuff like this? It was my 17th birthday. I had invited two of my best friends to stay the night. I waited for hours and finally got a text saying they got in trouble. They were twins and couldn't stay the night. About an hour later they were tagged in pictures. They were at another girl's house. I confronted them the next day and they stuck with their lie and said their mom wouldn't drive them because they were in terrible, so they walked to this other girl's house. My mom asked their mom because she knew how hurt I was. She didn't even know about my birthday, and they weren't in trouble. I stopped hanging out with them. Learned a few months later that one of them had decided she didn't like me because her 20-year-old crush, another friend's brother, had said it was a shame I was a minor because he thought I was cute. What a childish reason to end a friendship. Bullet dodged. Invited me to her wedding as a gesture of reconciliation and then uninvited me when I RSVP'd, or in other words, responded to her invitation. Also, another friend took me out to lunch and let me cry to her after I broke up with my ex. She said she had to go to her mom's for a while and she'd be back that evening with treats and a red box. She ended up hooking up with my ex. Yikes. We were friends since babies. Our moms worked at the same place. My mom saw him as her own child and frequently he was at our house after school because her mom was kind of absent. His family moved out of the state but we kinda kept in touch, then he came back. While we were on our 20s, my mom was going to start remodeling the house. He insisted on helping us since he was working with a construction company. Long story short, he said he needed some money for the construction permits. In hindsight it wasn't even that much, but he took the money and we never saw him again. He even blocked me on Facebook. We later found out that the permit costs was a fraction of the money he took. Biggest pain in the heart was watching my mom crying, disappointed that her own son would do that to her. So frick him. Speaking as someone who has never met either you or your ex-friend, this seems like something a drug addict would do. I had a very close friend in high school. She moved to Alabama for uni after we graduated, but we kept close. When she came back we didn't talk much, but I still considered her a close friend. We went out for coffee about 2 years ago. She kept asking me about my life and my goals and I said I was happy where I am. I coach gymnastics, and my boyfriend and I will eventually take over his family farm and start our own family. She texted me 2 days later and said, hey, so my entrepreneur friend is hosting a workshop. Do you want me to sign you up? I said no, but thanks for the offer. She then texted me, so clearly we are at two different points in our lives. You have no goals or ambitions, and I don't want that kind of negativity in my life. I wish you the best, and I never spoke to her again. Yeah, that bit about the workshop makes me think she was gonna sell you an MLM. Sorry you lost a friend to that. After 25 years of friendship, I announced to my best friend that I was moving to the city she was in. I had a great job opportunity and felt like it was an awesome time to make a big life change. I was so excited to tell her. I could hardly wait. She flatly replied with, "Cool," and when I asked her what parts of town I should look at to live, she stated, "I can't help you. You should just figure it out when you get here." We never had a fight, had been close for our entire adult lives, and I had continually helped her in all aspects of her life without hesitation. To this day, I cannot tell you why she started treating me this way. Long story short, we live in the same city and haven't seen each other in 6 years. And I'm quite sure we live minutes away from each other. I will never know what happened. Whoa, that is just astonishing. Really makes me wonder. In 8th grade, after I switched schools, a friend of mine called me one night and told me a kid I wanted to be friends with killed himself. 3 months later I visit their graduation ceremony and find out he lied to me and that the kid was still alive. Such a weird lie though. It turns out that he lied about every single thing. We were friends for over a year, but it felt like we'd known each other forever. He would always make it a point to let me know that I was someone he trusted, and that I was the only person he had. He would tell me that everyone leaves him, that he always hurts people, and my response to this was to make sure that I would never leave his texts unanswered, and promise to be there for him no matter what. One day, out of the blue, he tells me that our friendship is over. I remember feeling like my heart was shattered. I cried for weeks, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Our mutual friends assured me that he had a very good reason for doing this, and he'd be back to being my friend soon. So I began waiting, constantly worried about him. He told all our mutual friends what was wrong, except me, and instructed them not to let me know. Finally, my best friend calls me one day and tells me that he's lied to every single person he knows, and nothing we thought we knew about him was true at all. Turns out, he told everyone that he'd been diagnosed with cancer and had to take time away from everyone. During our friendship, he opened up to me about his extremely abusive household, and most of our friendship was me letting him know that he deserved better and I'd do anything to help him out of there. None of what he said was true. The truth came out because one of my friends caved and called his sister to find out how he was doing. She was confused because he was absolutely healthy, and when asked about their parents' separation, she confirmed that their parents were indeed together and were never at risk of divorce. That's a class A narcissist right there. Made us come to her seminar thing for some pyramid scheme thing. I just know it is. I thought we were going to hang out and she told me that she was going to bring us out and eat. She just abandoned us right after that crap. Same, only I thought we were going on a date. LOL. My 16th birthday I invited my friends over for a party including dinner. I spent all day cooking with my dad and made beautiful chocolate mousse cups in chocolate bowls. I went all out and I was so proud of the meal. I told everyone that dinner was at 6:30. Nobody showed up until 8:30. They were completely stoned and had a bag of toys from Dollar Tree. I had already cleaned up and put away all the food. They had all been hanging out without me on my birthday and I was still an afterthought. Whoa, that really sucks. Something kind of similar happened to me. I made food, but although several people said they were coming, only one person did. I was glad I wasn't totally alone, but I was also so embarrassed and humiliated. Here I was stupidly thinking people were really going to show up. She invited me over to hang out. 35 minutes in she was like I will be right back, gets in the car with her boyfriend and leaves me at her house with her kid siblings. She freaking tricked me into babysitting. She started fricking my husband while I was pregnant. Hey, mine too. While I was letting her and her mom live in my house rent free. My friend, we live on EST, texted my roommate owner of the condo who was living in California at 5 o'clock in the morning PST to say I was high on M and having sex parties every night. I was fast asleep. Turns out he was the high one texting so early. He was upset at me about something I stood up for and tried to make me homeless. Reason: we were at a bar, he was very buzzed and high sitting at a table, and my other friend and I literally just got there just in time to miss a big disagreement between two other friends, and he was pumped up to fill me in, but the way he snapped his fingers and slammed the table to demand me to sit next to him was too much. I said, let me get my first drink first, then I'll walk over, don't snap your fingers and demand me. That escalated quick way. He threatened to tip the table over. Ugh, it was ugly. That's so bad. Mid 2000s he tried to paint me as a porno king in high school just to get a girl not to like me cause he had a crush on her. Backfired. They immediately came up to me, asked me about it, and I said I only had one Playboy mag. My ex got with two of my friends after a pretty bad breakup, to the point where it just seemed like she was trying to hurt me, and my so-called friends were willing to do the same to get some action. So I was in the car with a third friend on Thanksgiving Eve telling him how much this was affecting me, to which he replied, that's so crappy man, I'd never do that to you. Well, that Christmas the very next month another friend shows me a picture of that friend and my ex together on Instagram. They started dating shortly after that. So much for I'd never do that to you. I had a friend do the same 2 days after a bad breakup, and she went and spent the weekend with my ex. He lived up the road from me and she did the walk of shame past my house. Had one friend that bought a bunch of tickets for a midnight movie premiere for myself and our entire friends group. About 15 of us. Day of the show, he texts me and says he forgot to buy a ticket for me. I ask, what do you mean you forgot to buy my ticket? Of the 15 you bought, how is it my ticket that you decided wasn't purchased? Turns out, he did buy a ticket for me included in the 15 he bought, but he just met a girl the week prior and decided to give my ticket to her. So our entire friends group went to the movie, minus me. There's other things he did to me as well. We're no longer friends. Hopefully it was a crap movie. My freshman year in college I had two roommates and one of their girlfriends came to visit for the weekend, so the other roommate and I were gonna give them the room to themselves for a little while. Most nights this wouldn't be a big deal, but this was in the middle of a blizzard and we had almost 2 feet of snow, so there wasn't really anywhere to go. So my roommate and a few buddies were gonna take a friend's truck out for a ride through the snowy hills we lived in and smoke some weed. As we are walking out to the truck I realized I forgot something and ran back upstairs to grab it real quick, and when I came back down I see the truck driving away without me. Turns out one of our other friends had their GF in town too and he brought her along, so there wasn't room in the car for me anymore, so they just left without me without waiting or even trying to tell me. I drive 6 hours, one way, twice in the span of a year to visit this sucker because I thought we were friends and he acted like we were. It cost me $300 each time to visit him, but he was alone in his new city. He moved away for his first job post uni and kept messaging me saying I should come visit blah blah blah. Later I find out this guy has came back to my town multiple times and didn't hit me up once, and he stayed for months at a time. Then I tell him about this and he says okay, he'll visit next time he's back in town. So then next time comes around and he stops by literally right before he's about to drive home to say hi for 5 minutes. Like, dude, you don't wanna see me? Why are you just going through all this BS and making me waste my money? Ugh. This reminds me of my incubator. I was raised by my aunt thinking my mom lived so far away because I only saw her twice a year. As an adult she tells me she was in my hometown twice a month visiting friends, but never had time to visit. She said it was because she's known them longer. LOL. So many stories to do with her. Years ago, almost all of my friends abandoned me when I was suicidal and had to go into hospital for a few weeks. It made my depression so much worse to know that sharing how I felt just scared people away. Luckily I spent a lot of time in therapy and made a huge effort to put myself out there in my local music scene, and now I have a completely new, much larger and more genuine circle of friends. I'm really glad that you found a new group of friends and are doing well. I open up to my ex-friend about being depressed and suicidal. He called me a P for thinking about suicide and that I have nothing to be depressed about. He stopped talking to me after that semester was over. My best friend best man at my wedding fricked my married sister on my wedding night. Turns out a full open bar was a bad idea. They called me up and invited me over to play a game with them and their friends. At the time I had only barely started driving, but I decided, yeah, that sounds like fun, so I went over to play. When I arrived I found out that they had volunteered me to pick up the other friends. I was not prepared to do this, but she trapped me because I had already agreed to come play with her friends. I was pretty annoyed by this, but I went ahead and drove to 3 places picking everyone up, and no one was really ready to go when I arrived, and one of them also needed me to drop them back on campus to drop off their school assignment. By the time all was said and done it was really late and I needed to get back home because I had to get up in the morning to go to work. Not one of them even said thank you. The friendship didn't really last much longer after that. Dang, that really sucks. I'm gonna get my license in a couple months. And if I've learned anything from Reddit, it's that people will try to take advantage of you once you get your license. This is currently happening. I had a stroke in 2020. I'm young, 31, and then found out that my kidneys were failing shortly after. I know it's a pandemic, but not one of my friends have even texted me to check on me or ask my husband who they're all also friends with. Literally everyone cut me off when I got sick. Can't drink, not friends anymore. I'll be your friend newly sober person here. When I was 14-16 I lived in a granny flat at the back of my mum's house. I had a big group of friends who would stay every weekend. We'd have drinks, movie nights, just hang out really. We were like a family and were all really close. Then mum put our house on the market and I lost contact with every single one of them. I think that's still the most used I've ever felt. Probably because the friendship meant so much to me, and I feel like they faked the whole thing for a place to stay. I offered to pay everything and even pay her for her time off work for my best friend to come to my wedding, but she didn't. It was a really small backyard wedding and I didn't have any bridesmaids, nor did I want anyone to spend money getting dresses, blah blah blah. I just wanted her to come. The excuse she gave was work, and so I understood, but then later found out she lied and had planned a trip with her other friends. I still don't know why she didn't want to come. We were friends for over 10 years and although it wasn't the first time she had really hurt me, it was the last. Getting like 3 inches from my face and yelling about how our mutual friend was asking to be assaulted by their significant other. He literally did the chest poking thing in public. Vehemently and loudly defend domestic abuse. No thanks to that. They all bailed on my college graduation and graduation party, and then accidentally included me on an email thread about all of them coming up with different excuses for missing my big day. It made me feel incredibly alone and I had no idea that they viewed me in such a negative light. As an adult I realized they were jealous, but back then, just assumed I had a major character flaw and started isolating myself from people. Someone did you a favor by accidentally including you on that email thread. My best friend got with my first husband while I was pregnant, helped destroy our marriage, supported him so he could quit his job and avoid paying child support, joined him in abusing my kids while they were with him, and then tried to cry on my shoulder when he ended up screwing her over when they split after 14 years of jointly making my life a living heck. I sent my friend who was supposed to be in my wedding a text message telling her that my now husband and I had decided to elope before he deployed to Afghanistan because we wanted to be married just in case he didn't make it home, but that we would still be having the big wedding when he came home, and I was so excited for her to be a part of that. She never responded and hasn't spoken to me since. My husband and I just celebrated our 3rd anniversary. I had a friend who randomly stopped talking to me for a while. Thought I made her angry or something, or she just got sick of me. A few years later I decided to look her up. Turns out she got into a fatal accident and that's why she never responded. I've lost a few friends this way as well. That and cancer, drugs, war, and suicide. 1. Wouldn't stop judging me for the dumbest things. 2. Wouldn't stop cutting me out for no reason. 3. Said I was academically dumb. They always came to me for help though. 4. Said I wasn't street smart. I can kinda agree with it. 5. Told me my hobby activity I do, band, will get me nowhere in life. I never said I wanted to do it as a job. Luckily I blocked them out of my life and don't deal with them anymore. This person reeks of insecurity. Had a friend that was super close to the point we discussed moving in, until she did with some college friends, then she went back to being too busy with school to ever talk until one day I stopped trying. Happened every couple of years. The time we stopped talking before this, I did an experiment to see when she'd message me first. 2 years boyo. An experiment to see when she'd message me first. This is why I don't have many friends. There's less than 10 non-family that'll message me out of the blue. When another friend, A, basically ghosted me and this friend, B, for a year or two. He came into contact with him again and they became best buds, which I didn't much care for but found quite odd. What's weird was that B had been claiming I wouldn't be willing to reconcile with her. Found it all very strange to make such claims, and for these dudes to act in such a petty manner without even asking or confronting me, but luckily I have much more genuine friends. Good friend tried to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy when I confronted him about lying. Freaking narcissistic prick. Met ex-friend as a coworker. He needed a ride home since he didn't have a car, so I offered. Drove him home dang near every shift for 3 years. Became my closest friend. I was 16. Just started driving. He was in his mid-early 20s. Now as a teenager I made some bad decisions and wasn't the best guy. But this was 8 some odd years ago. Fast forward to 4 months ago, when he told my fiancée every terrible thing I've done throughout my life, and detailed to her every reason she should leave me. Gave her a spare key to his house and told her that when she makes the right decision his doors are open. Apparently he's been trying to end our relationship for almost 2 years. Feeding her lies and whispering in her ear about how bad a person I am, so that he can have my fiancée join his fiancée in a 3-way relationship. When I moved home from college I texted some of my old friends to meet up for my birthday, dinner, a drink or so, no biggie. About half said they couldn't come but a few never even replied. Really showed how much they cared. Stole my Christmas and birthday present. Had him and my other friends over a bunch because my family went on vacation without me. I was only about 16-17, and I was home alone. Woke up one morning to grab my gift card that was my big present and found out it was gone. I knew every single person who was over since I was in elementary and treated them all like they were my brothers. I called up the Best Buy to see if someone used the gift card and found out that it had indeed been used already to buy a car stereo head unit. I got the specific model. Then I called up my one friend's girlfriend and asked her if he had bought anything at Best Buy lately. She said he had. I asked if he had used a gift card. She said he had. I asked if he had bought a head unit of that specific model. She said he had. Me and my other friends then got in our cars and drove over to his house. Looked into his vehicle and saw the brand new headset installed in his car. Theoretically, in a totally didn't happen scenario, we then proceeded to break off all his mirrors, windows, and slashed his tires. The guy didn't understand why I didn't want to talk to him ever again. Who the frick steals birthday and Christmas presents? The goddamn Grinch, that's who. Apparently he had been sleeping at my house weekly for years. I mostly hate my birthday and Christmas now because of that, and also because I was deployed on my 21st birthday as well as that year's Christmas, in which both my grandpas came down with cancer and one died while I was away. Kinda soured crap for me. What is your I feel like these guys aren't really my friends moment? My wife and I had a small wedding. I didn't invite a ton of people, but I invited 15 or so friends. Besides my best man, only one showed up. What's worse is that all these people said they were coming. I no longer put effort towards those friendships. That is messed up, when there is an RSVP option, and how much weddings can cost. Bro. Tried to invite them to an event I go to every year. Day of I go by myself and find out weeks later they went as a group without me. Frick, that's hard. They don't contact me at all unless I go out of my way to contact them first. They find any reason to not hang out. They claim we're good friends, but it just feels like they just want to be able to say that I'm a friend without doing anything to be a friend. When I decided not to be the friend who always organized things and started conversations, I get no contact on the weekends and during the week. I noticed that if I kept quiet in a conversation, they wouldn't even notice I was there. I decided to throw a Super Bowl party a few years ago. I went out and bought a new grill and mounted a TV in the kitchen for people who wanted to hang out and snack while watching the game. Had tons of food and beer ready. 30 minutes before kickoff I got a text that the whole group decided to go to someone else's house and that I should bring all my food and beer over there. Needless to say, I didn't go, and I haven't thrown a party at my house since. I'm just sad reading this. That sucks so much. I know it doesn't mean much from a random stranger on the internet, but I'm sorry that happened. Not me, but the kid who vandalized my house and car after someone threw eggs and rocks at my house and finished with a rock through my windshield. I left the car parked next to the street with a big poster on it with reward for information on it. Within hours the kid's friends turned him in for $10 each. I would have denied taking the $10 for ratting that kid out, unless he was peer pressured to do it. When I was a constant butt of their jokes, and they were thinly veiled insults that they gaslighted me into thinking I made up or that they were actual jokes made out of love. I feel this. Once when I tried to bring this up, they just said I couldn't take a joke, but their jokes always made me look so stupid. An easy answer for me. One year I had a sleepover party with a bunch of childhood friends from the neighborhood as a teen. It was really fun and I invited 15 or so kids, had to convince my parents and spent a ton of money to make it perfect for everyone. We went swimming in the pool, played dodgeball, kickball, had tons of food, had a Nerf gun war, played pool, played video games, and watched movies. It was a blast and everyone was clearly enjoying themselves. Then they tried to watch a horror movie that my parents would kill me if I saw it, and I objected for a while before reluctantly putting it on. I hated horror movies, too, but I wanted them to have fun. It was like 1 in the morning. They got bored during the movie and asked if we could all go to the clubhouse. I lived in a gated community with a public clubhouse at the time, to meet up some girls in the middle of the night. I said that my parents would never let it happen and that I didn't want to get caught, so I told them we couldn't go. After that, about 5 of them left at like 2-3 am to go without me. They said they'd be right back and that one of them needed their medicine so they went to get it. Within the hour, everyone was gone except me. I was crushed and too embarrassed to tell my parents. So I finally put on the movie I wanted to watch before going to sleep. In the morning my parents were furious because over a dozen kids that they had promised their parents would be at their house had disappeared without a trace. Sad and tired me had to call all of them to figure out where they were and let all of their parents know that they didn't spend the night. Even though my parents made me do it, a lot of them got mad at me for that. The worst part by far was figuring out that they had all went to a different kid's house to spend the night after leaving mine. Well, alrighty then. Frick those people. When you find out that people make plans regularly without you. Most of my friends live a bit of a way away, so sometimes those who live close together, or with each other, do stuff without me, which is fine. But we also do stuff together on a fairly regular basis. I've had friends who have just not bothered with the second part. 2 of my friends were telling me about a concert they went to and said, "You really should have been there, that's great. Maybe you could have invited me, or told me you were going." I was part of a group of friends. About 20 of us would get together at least once a month, but cliques started forming within the group and I found myself in the middle of them. I lived about 30 minutes away from most of them, so sometimes they'd hang out without me even though I told them I'd drive to hang out. I never got invited. The final straw was planning my birthday, sent a FB invite to the group and mutual friend acquaintances only to be reminded by an acquaintance that one of my friends from the group was having a big party that same day. I wasn't invited to that party. I still had mine with the few good friends I still have, and I haven't really talked to the other group since. Wow, what fake people. You deserve better, seriously. I used to go out for dinner with some college friends. Unlike me, they'd order multiple cold drinks and the most expensive things on the menu. Then, when the huge bill arrived, they'd say, "Let's just keep it simple and divide it equally." The guys knew I was paying double or triple what I should have, but that didn't seem to bother them. This happened to me once, so now I'm in butthole that says on a separate bill, after group orders. When I was hanging out with my real friends and felt at ease and calm with them, made me realize that my other friends gave me anxiety. Our group of around 6 was all out playing basketball, except I only found out when I went outside to do errands cause of how bored I was at home. Not only that, but I also heard they came near my place to use our internet to message our other friend to come play with them. That really fricked with me and I never felt the same around them. Change the Wi-Fi password. 2 situations. Both had to do with education. First was after passing my O-levels. My friends flunked, and some of them actually told me that I was hiding the fact that I was studying and influenced them to fail. I used to fail all the time throughout my years, but when it got to O-levels, I put my work in. Second situation was when I mentioned to friends that I'm heading to university. We were all in a car and smoking up, and they all started laughing and saying that university won't help, or that there's no point in me specifically going to university. None of them attended university. They also have rich backgrounds. At least some of them do. I thought about how I would react if I were in their shoes, and that's when I realized that they kinda suck. None of the people I used to hang out with and see on a regular basis reach out to me after I moved away. The ones that do are all former co-workers. I guess I should have hung out with the people at work more than the people I thought were my friends. I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. When my father passed, none of my friends showed up to the funeral. It was an hour and a half away, so when they made up excuses not to come, I said I understood. I didn't. Surprisingly, 2 of my neighbors that I barely know showed up. I'm friend with them now. I was in a friends group of 11. Really close. Hung out a lot. Oddly enough, everyone coupled up. I was the only non-coupled from the group. My GF wasn't from the pack. Eventually I found out that they met up very often without inviting me and I was just phased out. We had a WhatsApp group but it was quite underutilized. In the end, I just left the group. Just wait till they all start to break up. YIKES. When they joked about my suicide attempt, really broke me. No matter what the context, that's a crappy thing to do. Ignoring me for months and months at a time but posting selfies online, only coming around when I had drugs, gossiping about me. I had all the friends in the world when I was selling doing that one. I feel. I started a new job recently and a few of my co-workers and have asked me about myself and gotten to know me. In a meeting last week, 2 girls asked if I had any animals. I let them know I had a cat and they asked if they could see a picture. The meeting hadn't started yet and so I quickly went to my desk and got my phone. I came back and it was still just us in the room. I showed them the picture and put my phone in my pocket afterwards. I recently had my 30-day review and was told that me being on my phone during meetings was unprofessional and that I had offended someone in the office. When I asked which meeting my boss was referring to, he mentioned the one from last week. They were the only ones there at the time it happened, and I didn't get out my phone again, so it must have been them. Really crappy way to start a job. Man, frick them. Seriously. Pictures of the group of them at events I hadn't been invited to began appearing on Facebook. Then they started directly referring to and discussing these activities I hadn't been invited to in front of me, with the excuse of we didn't think you'd be interested, so we didn't tell you. Then they started making plans in front of me, always with a "oh, but not you. This is an us thing, and only so many people can go. Maybe next time." In 2.5 years, there never seemed to be a next time. Frick man, I hate that. I went through that for 5 years myself. After that, school ended and no contact from almost everyone in the group. Pulled the classic move of cancelling an event that everyone was invited to and then actually attending the event with a select group of people. With friends on a trip to Japan, drinking one night in Roppongi district. I'm trying to taper off. Karen, no, really, it was her name, keeps putting drinks in front of me, paying the bartender for weird shots for me, but not for anyone else in the group. She's saying really catty crap, but laughing like it's all good fun, with pals. She starts saying some pointed stuff that makes me think she's been holding on to some really ugly resentment for a while. After I'm good and sloshed, she pushes me over to my partner and tells him to grab a taxi and take me back. On the way back to the hotel, I look at my partner and say, "I didn't realize until now that Karen hates me." He replied, She sure seems to. Neither the trip nor the friendship was the same after that night, and I had the worst hangover of my entire life. Passed out on the floor of a Tokyo hotel bathroom. So awful. Hopefully you can or will return and make better memories on your next trip. So basically it was the end of term, so around 40-45 classmates agreed we would go to town after school, eat, take pictures, etc. Although it was not strict invites only, as they made it seem like everyone in the year were invited. The boys that I thought were the closest friends there were surprised at me coming. Eventually we split, some went to McDonald's, other Burger King, etc. We then regrouped for a group photo. At this point another 10 students that weren't initially going came, making around 50-55 people there. So one popular guy prepared to take a picture. Then some others were like, why has purple juice in it, let him take it. This picture literally had 70% of my so-called friends. I didn't feel good at all. No one offered to swap, and no, it was not because I'm a great photographer. Capital F. I was planning my birthday party last year, and when people showed up early and saw me working, nobody offered to help with anything. When a friend I was very close with texted me for the first time after several months of nothing, and it was about a pyramid scheme he was trying to recruit more people for. I was one of a dozen or so on the text. If it's any consolation, it's likely that other guy's social life is doing very poorly after that decision. A friend punched me in the stomach as the bus passed to look cool. I just accepted it until I thought about it later in the week or so. A friend, hope you revenge for it soon enough. When my friend asked me to go out with her the next day, then cancelled BC, she was going out with her parents, and then I went out with my mum the next day to kill some time and saw my friend having lunch with 4 other people. Freaking ouch. Sorry that happened. Every time I would spend time with them, it completely drained me from listening to all of their problems. I realized I was a therapist friend, rather than someone they actually cared about. I hate the fact I care but they could care less. You deserve more than that. Had a friend purchase a bunch of tickets for our group of friends for the midnight premiere of Jurassic World a few years ago. There was probably 16 tickets purchased, and I was pumped to go. The day of the showing, he texts me at like 4 and says that there's not enough tickets for me because he forgot to buy my ticket. I pressed him on this and asked him how of the 16, how was it my ticket he didn't purchase? He backtailed and claimed I told him I didn't even want to go. So I texted him screenshots of the 5 times I told him how I wanted to see it, when we discussed we were going to be at the theater, etc. So then he came right out and said it. He was giving my ticket to his new GF he just started seeing the week prior. I was P and ripped him a new butthole. But the worst part is, none of the other 16 people that went ever said a word to him about it. It was at that point I realized they didn't really give a crap about me. I no longer talk to any of them, due to some other things that happened last year, but that's a story for another day. Dang, that sucks, mate. I hope you found a better group of friends. At times I think it's when you can go forever without having them reach out. This only holds true if you are the one initiating. I've had groups of friends that all manage to stay in touch and I never hear from them. It happens. I was roommates with said friend before we actually started hanging out. It started nice, gossip here and there, mutual loathing for our crappy professor, but then she started drama with the club we both go to and started ruining it for me by constantly stringing the guys in the club along. It was obvious they flirted with her and she did too, and she would manipulate them into buying her stuff. So gradually, to avoid drama, I stopped going to club and talking to her. So she kept telling our mutual friends, oh, I don't know why but she, meaning me, is mad at me and ignoring me. I didn't do anything, and generally paint me as the bad guy. For your information, this girl never asked me anything, greet me or try talking to me like she said she did. She then started saying how I owed her for all the things she paid for, which confused me because every time I offered to pay her back she would decline and said it was no problem or I would pay her back if the thing bought was too expensive. This went on for the rest of the year and I was so depressed when all the low-key crap she would say to our mutual friends came back to me because they wanted both sides of the story. Luckily, she got academic probation because I stopped doing her HW for money and she never did her work, so I don't have to see her anymore or be roommates. My core group of HS friends had an entire night while I was working late where the running joke was how they could frick with my life because my reactions to chaos were funny. I don't mean pranks. I'm talking, who should sleep with his ex should one of the women here date him and have it be really dramatic so he's stressed out, all sorts of scenarios about doing real damage to my life in serious ways and cackling. This was the same crew who, when one of the dudes slept with said ex 6 hours after we broke up, called me immature for being hurt. When I asked them about it individually, they each said that my feelings being hurt by the convo meant I needed to learn to take a joke. I walked away from them entirely pretty much on the spot and didn't look back. 2 decades later, I hear things occasionally about them through random connections or social media. Most of them are professionally mediocre social train wrecks. Really drove home that the best revenge is living a better life than the people who did you wrong. In 6th grade my friend ruined it with me and the girl I liked, then continued to physical and verbally attack me to let out his stress. When all the airmen in my flight got busted using spice in 2012 and all got together and got their story straight about embellishing the amount of spice consumed at my parties back in 08 and keeping their use at zero minimal, the prosecutor made me sound like Charles Manson at my trial and like I led all these poor kids astray. Truth is, they were smoking the crap in training and then brought it to their duty station, and that's where I first seen it. Someone brought it to one of my parties and we smoked a joint. It wasn't even banned until 10, but I was convicted of use, possession and distribution in 2012 for use before 10, where distribution is defined as the movement from one individual to another. They said that since I passed a joint, that it was distro. I was reduced from E6 to E1. Forfeiture of pay for 3 months and 6 months confinement. Made it out with a general under honorable conditions discharge and still get all my benefits. Was 14 years in when all this happened. Sad to think that I would be retired right now. You got above E4. You were no longer in the mafia. Seriously though, that is some balls. Well, there was the time I had a party and no one came. It was hilarious. I don't bother with friends anymore. Now I read. A friend at work had her son's first birthday party. Her whole family was there. We showed up with our daughter and were the only non-family that didn't cancel last minute. Something like 6 other couples' kids cancelled. The kids had a blast, but it was sad to see. They had party favors and nice mylar balloons for the kids. We left with 6 balloons. When my girlfriend, who had become part of the group, started cheating on me with a friend from the group, everyone just said they didn't want to choose sides. Yeah, I don't want to choose any of you either. That was the same excuse that my former best friend said to me when I was raped by another one of her friends. Yeah, this isn't a situation where that's a reason. When they threw a rock at my dog, everything ended right there. Contacted me a few months later to hang. Nah, don't ever contact me again, bro. Dogs, people. I recently invited a friend over to watch the election results roll in. Nerdy, I know, but it is a bit of a tradition we have had for over 20 years. He spent the whole night playing 2 poker tournaments on his mobile phone, making almost no conversation. He crashed at my place that night, and I told him that I needed to start work at 10 AM the next morning. He has a bit of a reputation for being hard to get rid of. The next morning I made us breakfast at 9 AM. And then at 10 he decided he needed to use the bathroom, took his phone in there, and didn't come out for 40 minutes. Then I reminded him that I needed to start work. He took 30 minutes to put his shoes on, all the while repeatedly checking his phone. Once he had his shoes on, he then told me he was just going to have a couple of cigarettes before leaving. He sat outside in my courtyard for another 30 minutes, and then just walked away. No thanks for having me over, or thanks for breakfast, or good to see you, or even goodbye. Just walked away. Then he sat in his car across the street smoking another cigarette. That is, he was deliberately being a dong when he chose to smoke in the courtyard, just because he knew I was eager to get to work. This was the same guy who a few years back was 3 hours late to come over for dinner, partly because he stopped for a freaking burger en route, and the same guy who showed up 6 hours late to my daughter's 2nd birthday party, and just didn't show at all to my 40th birthday. I reflected on it afterwards and realized that he's not really one of my oldest friends. He's just some dickhead I've known for a long time. Needless to say, he'll be receiving no more invitations from me. 6 hours late for a second birthday party is just straight up not showing. Kids parties are like 2 hours. Gather the kids, eat food, open presents, fill them with sugar, let them run, then get out of my house. Best friend called me a snake behind my back because I was being quiet due to a depressive episode. Figured it was my fault for not making it clear about my situation. Later found out she knew I was depressed and just didn't care. I'm pretty late to the post so it won't be seen by much, but it was when they almost shot me in the head. They were about to drive me home. We were teenagers, just able to drive, and I saw them messing around in his dad's room as I was getting ready. We get in his parents' car, I'm in the passenger seat, he's driving, the other is behind me. All of a sudden it felt like my ears popped and there was just a loud high-pitched ringing that wouldn't stop, and right in front of me at the dashboard was a hole that wasn't there before, just an inch or so to my left. I looked back and saw him holding a gun, which I guess they took from his dad's room to play around with and look cool, and when I started freaking out they started getting pee off at me to be quiet because his dad might notice. He was mowing the grass by us but had those giant headphones on. They forced me to sit calmly for the ride and made me swear not to tell anyone. I was pretty shaken and also sort of afraid of them so I never did. I wish I had, but my parents might have killed them. I was grounded for a while, and when I was finally able to leave they said this to me, "We're so glad to see you again." We had to walk around everywhere. I was the only one with a car at the time. There was 2 instances with the same group of friends when I was 15. They would show up at my house to hang out and would just spend the next few hours getting off with their boyfriends. Same group of friends for my 16th birthday. I'd planned bowling, cinema, and one by one they dropped out a few days beforehand. One of them, who I thought was my best friend, straight out said she didn't want to see the movie I'd picked out for my birthday but got her boyfriend to call me to tell me they weren't going. The friendships with that group fizzled out a few years later. My best friend and I had a falling out. She instigated it, and the other friends never bothered to contact me afterwards. It's been 20 years and I'm really surprised none of them have contacted me with one of those "hey girl, hey hun" spam messages from an MLM scheme, because they would definitely be the kind of people who would get caught up in that crap. In middle school, we had a school day trip to a park with a swimming pool, mini golf, etc. My 3 best friends all said they weren't going to swim, so I didn't bring my suit. When we got there, they all had their suits and towels. They said they changed their minds about swimming but forgot to let me know. I had to play mini golf alone while they swam. This was all communicated by phone the evening before. I do think they were real friends, but they clearly didn't consider me as close a friend as they considered each other. What's the most fricked up thing a friend has done? Years ago I was at work and got an irate call from a friend's mother. Apparently she left her jacket at a mutual friend's house and a bunch of guys I hung out with crap and pee on her jacket and blamed it on me. So there's that. Who the frick? What the frick? What? Super close friend of me and my husband. He was in our wedding and met my then 14-year-old sister. Within 2 months, he was stalking her so badly intervention was required, and he lived on the other side of the state. Then, my husband stumbled on a folder belonging to said friend that filled with nothing but photos of lady feet and pics of my sister. I'm sure it comes as no shock that he got busted for kiddie pee a few years later and is now a registered sex offender. Note, my sister was not in the kiddie pee row, just row. When I was 8, my best friend and I agreed that during our school's cross-county run we'd finish together, and when one has to slow down and walk so would the other. Stitch etc. We slowed and walked several times for him. Then when I got a bad stitch and slowed, he just took off and kept going. When I got back to school I went up to him and asked WTF happened. That's when a group of other kids started laughing at me and he told me his friend suggested he trick me into going slower with him, then take off as soon as I'm tired. The fact it was planned, premeditated, and he was my best friend made me so upset. Probably minor in comparison to most of these stories, but something about it still pisses me off. I had an old high school buddy, or ex-buddy now, who beat his then GF to near death with a crowbar. He went away for a few years, and when he got out within a year he was back in for beating the pizza delivery driver who delivered his pizza. Dude, what the frick? That's one of the cardinal rules of the universe. Don't frick with the pizza guy. Stole my rent money, stole my money, stole my food, actually stole little things from my room and anything she could get her hands on. Lied about being raped, her stepbrother dying, and our mutual friends kissing her. Lied about everything else in her life. Quit good paying jobs for no reason when she was my roommate and would threaten to not pay rent. Smelled so bad because she never showed. Never. Tried to sneak into my husband's bed in the middle of the night to frick him, hoping that with the lights off he wouldn't realize that she wasn't me. We were all staying at another friend's vacation house and my husband had gone to bed early. I was still downstairs with everyone else when Susie announced she was going to bed about an hour after my husband had gone up. 20 minutes later I get a text from my husband saying Susie just came in here naked and started grinding on me. I think she was trying to trick me into thinking she was you. He knew it wasn't me because I am quite a bit shorter than Susie and I smell different and have longer hair, and also I've been with my husband since high school, so even in the dark he knows whether or not the person humping him is me. When I confronted her the next day she denied it, but turns out she told another mutual friend that she was planning on doing that, and he didn't think she actually would, so he didn't say anything to me or my husband about it. So yeah, that was pretty fricked up of her to do. Man frick Maya. My best friend at the time pulled the school fire alarm. Fire trucks showed up and everything, and it was a false alarm. He blamed it on me, saying that I dared him to do it and he caved in because best friends are supposed to do what their friends ask. We both got in ton of trouble, and it took me a long time to live it down. I asked him why did he really pull the alarm, and he said the sign said pull and he was curious to see what would happen if you push the lever instead. He dragged my name in to somehow deflect the blame off of him. My parents and teachers never believed my story. That was over 20 years ago, and I'm still salty over it. Freaking butthole. So I used to hide treasures in my hometown. I'd pull out like $100 in gold $1 coins and find a cool looking chest at a thrift store or some awesome looking container. Then I'd find a cool place to hide it, make a series of maps and riddles and hide them in clothes at thrift shops and books at public libraries. At the end I'd normally leave my email so people could tell me that they found it. I wanted someone to have a real life adventure. Well, I had one with my friend and after a year nobody had emailed me, so I went to check on it. All the money was gone but everything else was still there. Turns out my friend just drove back up there and took it all. You're like my favorite type of human. One of my friends cut his mother's throat with a box cutter during an argument. I hadn't talked to him for a few weeks before it happened because he'd been unhinged. I saw his mom at the store. She had a bandage and some gauze wrapped around her neck. I asked her what happened, so she pulls me to the side and tells me that her son was off his meds. They got into an argument. He held her down and cut her throat with a box cutter. She tried to reassure me that he wasn't really trying to kill her, just scare her and maybe go back to jail so he could get treatment for his mental illness. Before sentencing, she asked me to write a character reference letter for him saying that he was okay while medicated and what he did was totally out of character. It wasn't. He'd been off meds and irrational for weeks. He was the kind of guy who goes off his meds when he thinks he's cured and back on them when it gets so bad his friends can't be around him anymore. I told her I couldn't do it. I'd feel awful if I wrote that letter and he got a lighter sentence because of it. Then he turned around and did something even worse later. Reminds me of when my cousin asked me to be a character witness for her crazy boyfriend who wanted to be a cop. I kind of gave vague, not quite yes or no answers. Then they asked if I'd trust him with a gun. Couldn't bluff that one. Had to say no, and then reaffirmed with them that neither he nor my cousin would ever find out about this. Whenever this friend found out I was interested in somebody they would ask them out. Before or after I did. Didn't matter. He admitted to coercing other men into having sex with him. He was gay and ruining their innocence, or however he phrased it. He'd often have drugs at the ready, so I suspect he was getting them high and then taking advantage of them. I didn't quite understand the weight of his words until he said a mutual acquaintance of ours was one of the guys he did it to. And I guess he said he contributed to his suicide attempt because the guy came back and told him that it really messed with him what he did to him. The last time I ever hung out with him was at a campfire. He had a male friend over and was being obviously flirtatious, and the poor guy was giving him really obvious signals that he wasn't into it. It was unnerving to watch. I haven't heard from him in years, but I wouldn't be surprised if I ever saw in the news that he was charged with rape or sexual coercion. He had some messed up friends too. What was your reaction then when he told you he was a sexual predator? When they were in 2nd grade, my brother and his moron friend had some science project thing. They were supposed to do some sort of baked soda volcano or similar, but it was up to them. The friend decided he wanted to show off a horned lizard, a native threatened species, so he asked my brother to find a specimen, dead or alive. Well, he came back with a live one and the dipshit friend took it, put it in a Ziploc bag, dropped it on the ground and then stomped on it, repeating what? It can be dead or alive. If you can imagine, a mashed lizard wasn't a proper science fair project, so they didn't even use the dang thing. Instead, he did some bullcrap involving electrocuting live earthworms. Parents, please teach your kids to treat animals with respect, even the ugly, gross and or stupid ones. Even the ugly, gross and or stupid ones. I'll assume you're talking about the kids here and not the animals. Slept with my husband. Pretended nothing happened and consoled me as my marriage fell apart. Makes me laugh now. No soul. That's fricked up. One of my friends threw an empty glass bottle at me and it caused me to lose 13 front teeth. It was an accident, but then he started to try and blame me. Even his mother would call me and say that this is all my fault somehow. They tried to turn the rest of our friends against me, but luckily they have seen what really happened. The case ended up in court. He threw a party, drank maybe 30 ounces whiskey, puked. I gave him water. Party's still going on but he's wasted. Passes out sitting up at table, falls on the ground. Pick him up and bring him to his bedroom and make him drink more water. His bedroom is directly off the living room. Leave the door open to keep an eye on him. Party dies down after cops show up with noise complaint. 8 of us left, music is off now and we're playing poker. All of a sudden we hear him laughing, we look over and he's laying in bed, pee straight up, laughing his butt off. We all start laughing, then next thing we hear from the bedroom couldn't have been anything other than explosive diarrhea. We all leave after the smell starts wafting towards us. All these horrific stories, then out of nowhere this gem turns up. I can't stop laughing. My best friend and I parted ways, got a while and are now back to where we used to be. I got out of the military and he stayed in. He got stationed in Germany and we used to FaceTime once a week just to shoot the crap. He ended up getting together with this bee who was super controlling. She didn't like the fact that he is also friends with my wife and could talk to her with such ease. Either way, he comes back stateside. I go visit him and he tells me he's planning on marrying her. I tell him it's a freaking horrible idea and I've never seen him so unhappy even after we lost a few good friends in the sandbox. We get into an argument and basically shake hands and walk away. I had a void in my life as I no longer had a best friend. He calls me 2 years ago and tells me he's getting a divorce. He flies out to see me in my new home and we end up spending 12 hours catching up over 2 bottles of wild turkey and about 3 packs of cigarettes. In the end he tells me he should have listened to me and he was sorry. I named my first child after him and now he's getting married again to an amazing woman who respects our relationship and to whom I've grown to love as a sister. Thank you for this. This was genuinely heartwarming to read. Best friend of 10 plus years. I had a miscarriage. Pregnancy unplanned, but I was married for 10 months when it happened. She goes on a long rant about how my husband can't afford to take care of you and why were you even thinking about having a family. It ended and it's your fault you had a miscarriage. If you hadn't been so stupid and forgot your birth control you wouldn't be in this situation. 3 days after it happened, that was 8 years ago, we parted ways. That happened soon after this confrontation. Regardless of her opinions of your life choices, that is absolutely the worst time to have that conversation. Friends are supposed to be supportive, and even tough love isn't being, and but when you're still in the throes of that terrible loss and the hormone crazy physical trauma. Happened to one of my friends. We'll call him Greg and his roommate Matt. Greg adopted a cat without asking Matt. The cat was really good-natured and well-behaved, but Matt expressed frustration to me about Greg never having asked him prior to getting the cat. Matt also told me later that same night about how his dad used to drive around their farm purposefully running over stray, feral cats. A few weeks later, the cat disappeared. They lived in an apartment complex with no direct doors to outside. Had to go through a hall, a doored stairwell or elevator, and 2 sets of doors to get out of the common room on the main floor. I'm almost positive that Matt got rid of the cat, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't as nice as dropping it off at a shelter. My now ex-friend of nearly 20 years accused my partner of touching her, very inappropriately, while I was there, sitting in between them. Of course it didn't happen, plus she had reason to set him up. But she went to the police anyway. After 2 months of heck they decided there was not enough evidence for it to even go to trial, so the whole thing was dropped. Super fricked up, and I never did get a reason or an apology. Anyway, this will probably be buried, but that feels good to get off my chest. A couple months ago, my friend who is my co-worker and roommate cheated on her long-term boyfriend with one of our co-workers after a party. They were both drunk, but they both spent the night all over each other, with her talking about how she wants to frick him and how she's always been attracted to him. I end up ditching her, knowing that she had another co-worker, not the boy she liked, who was able to take her home safely, not thinking that she would let the boy stay over. Well, he did, and they had sex, apparently several times. I heard it happening and ended up leaving the house because I was uncomfortable, and my drunk logic was just that it was better to leave and avoid the situation. Well, last night she is telling another one of our friends that she wants to claim rape on him, which is bulls, because despite the fact that they were both drunk, they both clearly consented based on the actions I witnessed. And I know for a fact that she didn't tell him to stop or anything while it was happening, because she said so. And along with that, she was trying to claim that a guy at the party we were at last night was sexually harassing her, when she was the one all over him and he didn't want anything to do with it. She just is trying to ease her guilt of the fact that she is a cheater by saying she is forced into doing things, and it pisses me off so much. TLDR, my friend is a cheating, lying B. If this is true, you need to tell someone before she tries to make a false report. I'm not entirely sure who would be best to talk to in your situation. Maybe a lawyer who could take your statements in case this ever does go to court. Befriended my fiance so that she could talk crap about her to the rest of our circle, spreading lies that never happened. My finance and I married, and we are no longer friends with that C. Good choice choosing the money. My best friend of 21 years fooled around with my wife while pretending to help me figure out my marriage and get it back on track. He even hung out with both of us and acted like an arbitrator for some of our more productive arguments. He was the godfather of both of my 2 kids. Turned out alright, divorce is on the way, and it's what I should have done years ago. He's no longer my friend, and I'm in an awesome relationship with an amazing woman who genuinely doesn't give herself nearly the credit she deserves. So maybe I should thank him? I dunno. Still stabbed me in the back, though. Frick you, dude. I was in my calculus class mid-afternoon and I get a call from my apartment complex. My dog was found alone in the dog park with another dog. They asked me why I left them there. I told them I was in class and I haven't been home since that morning. Left class early, got to the office and a cop was there holding both dogs. My heart freaking sank because I thought I was in deep crap, like she bit someone. Turns out my friend and his friend took the dogs, my dog and the friends of, to the neighboring dog park. They eventually left the dogs there to go get snacks from the local gas station with the idea that they would watch each other. They said they were gone for a few minutes, but the office said they were sending someone out there to check every 15 minutes for about 3 hours. I took both dogs home and proceeded to lose my crap. How can someone do that with animals that are not even theirs? People like that boil my blood so much. I know I could not handle it rationally if it ever came to me. My boyfriend cheated on me with one of my close friends while I was sleeping on the very couch they were on. Not full on intercourse, but enough stuff for it to be beyond twisted. I eventually woke up to it and we broke up. A few years later, the same happened again, this time on a bed. I can't make this crap up. It was a different friend and a different boyfriend, obviously. You'd think that that's such an extreme and fricked up thing to have happen to you that the universe feels like once is beyond enough for one lifetime. But apparently freaking not. I'm so sorry you had to go through that twice. That just seems so unfair on all levels. She offered to host my baby shower. She called a lot with ideas for games, menu ideas, etc. She sent out invites and delegated the cake to another friend. Great, right? The day of, I'm starting to panic. I'm about to have a house full of people and she's nowhere to be found. Not answering calls, emails, texts. B set me up. My husband signed a blank check, sent 2 of my friends to the store for food and game prizes while he ran to another store to get plates and napkins. It was a mess. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried while they were doing all this. I was useless because here I was, 7 months pregnant, with the broken foot, on crutches, and finding out my friend of a decade wasn't my friend at all. It ended up working out okay. It wasn't what I pictured but we had fun anyway. I was just beyond hurt and embarrassed. Oh, I forgot. She didn't invite my 2 best friends. I had called them earlier in the week to see if they were coming. That's how they found out about it. She later admitted she doesn't like them so she didn't invite them. Pulled his girlfriend's top down right in front of me, exposing her breasts. Said, "It's okay. She's drunk. She won't remember. We're no longer friends." I wonder what he would say if you said you would pull down his pants exposing his dong to everyone anytime he got drunk. He sucked my recent ex's toes, to which he sucked his toes. He then attempted to try and convince me to get back with her without informing me of any toe sucking activities. I only found out later when she went psycho on me. There's a reason she's an ex. Asked him to take care of our elderly dog for 3 days while we were at a wedding. He must have thought she was unwell because she was whining, as she would do because she misses us. So rather than waiting one more day for us to get home, he called a vet and had her put down immediately. What the frick? I had asked a friend to dog sit my pug and bulldog while I was on vacation in Europe. 3 days before I fly home, my friend emails me and says my pug is walking with a very slight limp. This isn't that uncommon after long playful chases between my 2 dogs. So I say don't worry. I also say, if it gets worse to take her to the vet and I will pay for the visit and her treatment. My friend does not say anything further but the day I arrive back he says that he will not be at the house when I get home. Anyway I get back home and my pug is not slightly limping. She is putting no weight at all on one of her front legs. It is obviously completely broken at the knee and just dangling freely. I found her on a blanket that was conveniently flipped. When I unflipped it, the other side of the blanket was covered in blood. After rushing to the emergency vet, the vet says my pug's leg is broken in multiple places and will not heal to be normal. In addition, the vet says my pug was trying to chew off her own leg at the knee. Dogs have a survival instinct to do this when dealing with horrible injuries. I am still super pissed that he let my dog suffer for 3 days and I have not spoken to him since that time. He is an ex-friend. My pug has recovered and to this day is a very happy tripod. Had a friend I met in middle school and we were close. We dated, broke up, still friends. Or so I thought. After that she was heck bent on dating my exes, copying my tattoos, my hair, my style, everything. She even went as far as sleeping with my ex when I was still with him for dang near 4 years. That is one of the main reasons my ex-BF and I broke up. Cause he admitted to fricking her during our relationship. I'm married now and my husband can't stand her either, thank God. But she still copies me, and tries to clone herself into being me. It's freaking creepy. Yikes, I'd keep a close eye on her. That story smells suspiciously like the red flags leading up to her murdering you and stealing your face. Tried telling me my boyfriend had texted her saying he wanted to hook up with her. When I was with him the whole night she claimed he had texted her, and guess what? He didn't text her at all. Hanging out with him, friend 1, and another friend, friend 2. I get in an argument with friend 1 about Wikipedia being a reliable source or not, and after the argument was over he told me that he only came to my house to hang out with friend 2 because both of their houses were unusable at the time. I know it's not nearly as bad as the other posts here, but it really hurt my self-esteem for a while. I'm in high school, junior year I think, and at the time my main social life was with my camp friends from my Jewish camp who lived really far away from me, needed to fly to get there. I wasn't very popular in my school, and my camp friends were the most important friends I had. The year before, all of them had come to stay with me for a weekend and we had a great time, which was a huge deal because it took a really long time to get permission from all of our parents and set up the flights, etc. The summer that year, we all went on a 6-week trip to Israel with our camp, and I had a miserable time. I was your stereotypical awkward self-conscious teenager. A girl on the trip decided she hated me the first day on the trip for no reason, said I looked like someone else she hated, and bullied me for the rest of the trip. I was super unpopular and spent the trip trying to fit in completely unsuccessfully, and all of my friends, the ones who visited me for New Year's, kind of went along with it. They didn't encourage it but also didn't try to help me. Being a stupid kid in high school, I was devastated but still thought my friends were close with me. Fast forward to the next New Year's Eve, which I spent alone with my mom again. Not many friends in high school. My camp friends had told me they were staying in their home states. That night I saw that they all posted photos to Facebook showing that they had actually flown all the way to my state and were having a huge party with all of the other kids from the summer trip, including the girl who bullied me. The party was 30 minutes away and not only had I not been invited, they had lied to me to keep it a secret. It devastated me and I haven't spoken to them since. It's been over 10 years and it still stings even though I grew out of my awkwardness in college and have a great social life now. TLDR. The friends I thought I was closest to who lived a flight away lied to me about their New Year's Eve plans and secretly planned to come to my state to see other friends and keep it from me. This hurts to read. I'm glad you've made it full circle after this, and those people are buttholes that'll get their karma in some way. My mum died 8 years ago. Told my best friend and her family that the funeral, which was 8 hours away from where we were all situated, was for family only and we were gonna have a memorial for her friends when we got back. Driving to the funeral, past the one of 2 hotels in the town, we see them. Yep, turned up. Dad, brother and I were supposed to be the first ones to say goodbye as they were lowering mum into the ground. Best friend's mum collapses and howls at the head of the grave as we were saying goodbye. Best friend never gave condolences. Last time we spoke was at the wake. Frick those people. We had my uncle and auntie's friends show up at my grandmother's funeral, and my pop asked who they were. Didn't even know my gran. Obviously just wanted an interstate holiday and a couple of days off work. I had a friend who slept with another friend's boyfriend. She tried to justify this by saying she has thyroid cancer and that she's been getting shots every month to help and that after she turns 20 the shots will stop working which will cause her to die. She clearly wasn't educated with how thyroid cancer treatment works, as it has a very high survival rate when diagnosed at a young age. That was a few years and based on her logic, she only has 1 more year to live. Even having cancer and thinking that you're going to die doesn't justify betraying your friend like that. WTF. If you've ever fallen out with someone who was your best friend, what was it over? He turned his life around. He almost killed himself in a car wreck driving drunk. Then, his fiancée got pregnant. He sobered up quick. I was still running and gunning. When he re-evaluated his priorities, there was no room for someone like me who was sure to get him in trouble again. Now that I'm sober, I'm really glad he made the choices he did. I miss you bro. Hope you and the family are doing okay. He got really religious to the point of extremism. It happened so fast that I thought it was prank. No conversation, no reasoning helped. He stopped listening to music, started to tell us we're on the wrong path and became more and more secluded. I tried my best to remain friends with him even though we became complete opposites of each other. I'm atheist. Until one day he came back from studying abroad for a year. I heard he got married so I congratulated him and asked him when we'll have the pleasure to meet his wife. He told me why would you meet her? She's my wife, you have no business talking to her. That's when I realized that the person I grew up listening to Pearl Jam with had completely gone. Best friend of over a decade. Thought my husband was hot, made a play for him. telling him that I didn't need to know. He put her in her place and he told me about it. Had a rather mild conversation about how sad it was, and I've not seen or heard from her since. You have a good husband. Money. He was a close friend for about a decade, but he was perpetually broke. Poor money management exacerbated by alcohol, cigarette, and other substance addictions. Not because he didn't earn anything, and was in the habit of calling me at odd hours whenever he needed to borrow cash. So this one time he calls and it was late and I answered what in a gruff tone because I was exhausted. He was taken aback and said, "Why are you so upset? Geez, just go to heck," and he hung up. At that point I felt bad because maybe he wasn't going to ask for money. So I called him back and said, "You woke me up so I was groggy." Then he proceeded to ask me for money. At that point I said, "I knew you were going to ask for money and that's why I sounded irritated." I told him I was sick of getting calls like this, especially late at night. At that point he blew up at me and told me to frick off and that I've never been a friend to him. The next day he sent me a long rambling email saying that he doesn't think he should be friends with a washed up loser like me. I sent him a short reply back saying that I accept his unfriend request. That was about 10 years ago now. I've since moved away from where he lives. He tried to contact me once since then, late at night of course, but I didn't answer. I love that you called him back to know what the call was really about. You were still open to listen to him if he needed to talk, and that's great. His ego couldn't handle the notion that someone could find me attractive and not him, despite him being better looking by most standards. We happened to meet the same girl independently. When he tried to make a move on her, he got shut down. I met her at a separate party and we hit it off. After we started dating seriously, he passive-aggressively ostracized me from our group of longtime friends. Row. His girlfriend kissed me. I stopped it but had to tell him. It's been 18 years and he still thinks I did it to hurt him, when in reality she jumped me. Similar situation. Her husband hit on me and she blamed me for it. I found out later through mutual friends this was not the first, nor the last time it happened. First one was my fault. We had been friends since we were little kids. I started living with my girlfriend at the time and pretty much ignored everyone. Part of that was because she used to get pee at me when I would talk to other people. So he called me a few times and I never called him back. I've tried apologizing several times and he ignores me. The other guy, we were friends since we were little kids as well. He stole a couple of my girlfriends in middle school. But whatever, it's not a big deal. After high school, I met someone who I really liked. He thought she was attractive, so he tried hitting on her and hooking up with her. One night I was supposed to go to his house and hang out. He invited her as well, knowing that I liked her. He spent the entire night trying to hook up with her. She wasn't interested and left with me. I was with this woman for a few years and he used to hit on her. I got sick of it and we stopped hanging out. He told me that he was in love with me. I told him I just didn't feel the same way. We stayed friends for a while, but it was never the same. I told her I was gay, which she was kind of okay with, until I admitted I didn't fancy her. I said I didn't think of her like that, which apparently was incredibly insulting of me to say. What do you mean I am not hot? You like girls? I am a girl, so I must be hot for you. A few weeks after my mother passed, I was still in shock. This resulted in me being quiet and never enthusiastic. This bothered my friend because I was always quick to laugh and up for a good time. He said I was using her death as an excuse for my behavior. Got in my car and never talked to him again. I really wish I punched his punk butt now. He started doing Oxycontin, and so did the new crowd he started hanging out with. Then it escalated to H. I was done after that. It's sad when it happens, but sometimes cutting them out of your life is the best thing you can do. She got addicted to Oxy. Found out that I had unknowingly purchased stolen goods from her. This was before I knew she was a junkie. I felt like complete crap and gave the stolen things back to their original owners. It ended up costing me upwards of $200, which I of course will never see again. When she first ended up out on the streets, I offered her a ride to the grocery store to buy her some dinner or snacks, and instead she asked me for $100 cash. Frick that. Thank you so much for returning the stolen goods. You are a very good person. She turned to her church every time she got into trouble. Crack. 2 unplanned pregnancies with 2 different one-night stands, and some legal trouble. And every time she started going back to church, she stopped talking to me because I was a terrible influence on her. I never did drugs and had a stable relationship with the same guy for 8 years and a clean record, so it was never clear on how I influenced her in a negative way. We were best friends for 20 years and now we are just acquaintances on Facebook. She sent me a message before I got married telling me that I was going to heck for living with my boyfriend before marriage. I told her the sex was too amazing to stop living in sin. Haven't said a word to each other since. You should have replied with, said the woman with the 2 bastard kids. Wait, that's assuming she kept them. Oh well, the same works with abortions. Churches tend to frown upon those as well. She spent years talking crap about me and making up rumors. When I called her out on it, she cried and claimed that I'd been trying to make her miserable for years, because the entire freaking world revolves around her. I majored in economics because I wanted to make more money than she would with PR. I got a rental house for $50 a month cheaper and it was standalone, because I wanted her to feel crappy about her duplex. I offered to help her get a job where I worked since she hated the job she already had. She accepted the job but told everyone I helped her get it because I wanted to assert my dominance. I started dating a guy that was quite cute and a former football player, and I did so because I wanted her to feel like her pudgy boyfriend wasn't good enough. My parents invited her to the beach with us because they wanted to show off how they had more money than hers. Not true. My parents just seemed to like me more than hers liked her and wanted me to have a friend at the beach. That was 2 hours away. It's not like we went on some extravagant thing. I got a new car because hers was crappy, not because my power steering stopped working and I needed to get to school. I started working out daily to make her feel like crap about her body, not because I was sick and tired of being on the sidelines with asthma-stunted lungs. I got a dog because I wanted to show that I had more time and money, otherwise I would have gotten a cat like she did. What exactly? I went to Disney World with her roommate because we wanted to exclude her, even though she was invited but never asked for the time off to go. The list just goes on and on. She can never take responsibility for herself or understand that other people are just out there living their life for them, not for her. I felt bad for her when I first met her. It seemed like her family was just mean to her. They weren't. She spun everything to match her victim story. They tried to include her in things, but she would flip out that her mom took just her to dinner and then the next day took her sister to get her nails done. While former friend was in class, they didn't include her, so they hated her, even though she didn't care that her sister wasn't included on dinner. Sad thing is, her family is pretty nice and treat her way better than she treats them. A Pokemon card I found in the mall. He said he found it. His dad was the tiebreaker. Gave it to him. It was a Holo Ninetales. Sad. We had a piano student steal a Holo Charizard from my brother. His mom was told but just asked him and he said that he didn't. That card was worth a lot and I hate that kid for that. My brother cried and cried. So sad. He was told to stop wandering the house but would go to use the bathroom, and finally mom had enough and told his mom to stop bringing him. We were best friends for I'd say 10 years. We'd hang out every week or every other week. He moves off to go to school and meets a girl there who he proposes to. But that wasn't really the issue. My thought was, oh hey, he'll probably ask me to be his best man. We've been best friends since we were small. Instead he's got some new best friend he made at university and asks him to be his best man. I wasn't even considered as a groomsman. It may sound selfish but that hurt. It's one of his most significant events in his lifetime. We'd both called each other our best friends through pretty much our entire lives and I wasn't even considered significant enough to be acknowledged. I only got an invite to his wedding because his mother invited me. I denied it as it was a few provinces away and the whole circumstance made me feel very awkward. I haven't talked to him since and he hasn't bothered trying to talk to me. Since almost all the other comments here are blaming the other person, I'll share mine. Not my best friend but close. I threw a birthday party for him and he got really angry about it and refused to come to it. I got furious about it and drunkenly yelled at him over the phone because I thought it was crazy to not want to celebrate your own birthday since he likes being at other people's birthday parties just fine and seems to have a great time. It turns out he secretly really hated celebrating his birthday because his dad was never there for his birthdays as a kid. Haven't really spoken since and it's been almost 3 years. Figured I would add my own experience as you guys shared yours. I was best friends with this girl for around 3 years. She even left her job to come and work at the same place as me. This is where things slowly went downhill. We ended up spending so much time together inside and outside of work and even formed a little group of friends made up of people from work. I ended up getting together briefly with one of the guys in the group on the DL, and even though we agreed to keep things hush hush, I told my best friend. She went ballistic. I had no clue she would react like that. I really would have kept my mouth shut had I known. Anyway, her reaction just came across to me as pure jealousy, even though she had her own boyfriend that she'd been with for a year or so. She put it down to the fact that I'd messed up the friendship group, in her eyes, and that she didn't want her two best friends hooking up cause it was weird. To a work party she tells everyone the secret and ends up confessing her feelings to him, resulting in him pushing me away and choosing her. Now her and I just awkwardly avoid contact at work. He left an imprint of his butt in crap on the toilet in his apartment and his room smelled like masturbation and dirty laundry. I asked him nicely to take care of these things and he didn't do it, so I eventually yelled at him and told him he wasn't wanted if he was going to keep our apartment that way. He moved out pretty soon after. This was actually a best friend that I hooked up with his now wife, who at that time was a friend of mine. His wife turned out to be incredibly jealous and possessive. She wouldn't allow him to see anyone unless she came along with him. I couldn't hang out with him and have a guy's night or anything. I told him about it, but he didn't want to make his wife upset. Makes sense to me that he doesn't want to make his wife upset, but we couldn't be the friends that we always were because his wife was possessive over everything he did. He cut me out of my friend group and got them to block me on Facebook. Then he talked crap about me thinking I wouldn't find out. I knew all along. The ravages of time. We developed different interests. We made different friends. We never really stopped being friends. We just drifted apart. She's my husband's ex-girlfriend. We all went to high school together. While they were dating, her family threatened him, saying things like, "You are threatening her place in our family." She was Mormon. He isn't. Her mom tried to run him over with her car, etc. Long story short, she dumps him. She tried to do it over IM. He called her a coward and made her at least respect him enough to call him. Years later, my husband and I start dating. Former best friend is told. I asked if she was okay with it, lol. And she told me yeah, he's a great guy. You two will be so happy together. Suddenly, she unfriends then blocks him on Facebook. Then she calls me up and says she is getting married and wants me to be a bridesmaid. Before I say yes, I talk to my husband about it. He wants me to let her know where I'm at in life before I drop over $1,000. Plane ticket for a cross-country flight, rental car, wedding gift, etc. So I email her and tell her that my, then future, husband and I are living together, and I've left the Mormon church. Husband wanted me to tell her so that he knew I would have an ally in Utah and wouldn't be kicked out of the reception by her parents who still hate him. She flipped out. Claimed that my husband had been abusive to her, stalked her to the point of getting a restraining order against him. LOL nope. We checked. Not to mention my husband has never lived in Utah. She claimed that I had turned my back on God, on her, on my family, and that she can't believe that I had given up that which is most precious before marriage. Jokes on her. I know what my husband and she did together while they were dating. I stopped taking to her for 2 years. She actually showed up to my sister's wedding about a year and a half ago, with a gift for my unborn child, acting like nothing had happened. Before we parted, she again accused my husband of stalking her and her roommates, calling her old roommate so much for info on her that they had to change their cell numbers, and that I could ask them if I needed proof. We haven't spoken since, and I don't plan to. I'm sick of her accusing my husband of crimes that keep getting worse every time we talk. As a Mormon, I'm face palming hard right now. I'm glad she's gone from your life. Although we are still friends, my former best friend got married to an awful beast of a woman, and we've been drifting apart ever since. She is an obtuse, religious zealot who lives to give unsolicited advice to everyone. She's an anti-vaxxer and got offended when I mocked people who think the earth is only 10,000 years old. The worst part is that he gets sucked into her nonsense, and while he was once a really intelligent guy, he has gotten progressively dumber since being married. I lost a friend under eerily similar circumstances. Super conservative religious nut that he fell head over heels for. He dumped all his old friends though, not just me. He hit his girlfriend for taking his car down the street. When some of our friends went over to talk with him about it, he beat up his younger brother for driving his car to get a car part for his own car. Something tells me the guy does not like other people driving his cars. She accused me of trying to flirt with and steal her boyfriend to all our friends after I told her that her actions on a specific night really hurt me. She called me a crazy manipulative princess and tried to isolate me from everyone. I have never had interest in her now ex-boyfriend. Her boyfriend and I were good friends, but only because we worked together and had tons in common. She still believes she was faultless for what she did and that I am evil. He broke up with her because she was being such a crappy person too, and most of our friends believed me over her, so they think she's completely crazy. I suffered through an awful abusive relationship and confided in her about how disgusting he made me feel. How it hurts to see other couples because I still hear my ex in my head telling me he loves me right before he tells me I'm a heartless bee for not spending more time with him. That is going out to visit my friends for one night and not constantly texting him. 10 years and she did me like that. Screw that. We went to a club with her other friend. The two of them who drove went to see two guys they hooked up with the week prior. So there I was a fifth wheel until 5 AM, where I finally told them I needed to get home because I had class at 8 AM. They talked crap about me the entire drive home like I wasn't even there. Frick them. It's happened twice and still eats at me. Best friends. 4 of us. Since middle school, all of us went to very different and far away colleges. We'd Skype a little bit, mostly texted and used Facebook, and hung out a ton when all in town. I started to see them less but found them posting their adventures together on Facebook. I tried to contact them many times and they made excuses at first, but ultimately ignored me. It all culminated in one of them getting married with another as the maid of honor, and I wasn't invited at all. This is mostly why I no longer use Facebook. Second was a friend who went on a long overseas trip through her college and it changed her. She really found herself, which is great, but made new friends and they kind of worshipped her. I told her I was concerned about her ego after some disagreements and she ended our friendship right there. I wasn't the only friend that she burned bridges with because of this, but she and I were best friends of like 5 years at that point. I do realize this was equally my fault, but that doesn't stop the hurt it caused. I've got 2. One is that he turned from a anger issue infested high schooler to an adult that verbally abuses his friends and can't play a game of D&D without going off on them. He's now got 3 kids by 2 different mothers. He has had an alcohol problem. He is currently in prison serving 2 years because when he and his most recent ex were blackout drunk, he raped her. I don't know if I trust either him or his ex, but if the defense is you don't remember either and I'm not the sort of guy to do that, then I don't care. Done. The other guy I hadn't seen for a little while. Just normal life circumstances. We get back together and I'm trying to show him 2 things I'm really proud of. 1. My website. Finally up and running. 2. My child. Finally got the okay from the wife to tell more than just family. I say it out loud and it's like he doesn't even hear me. Just keeps talking about whatever awesome e-cig mod he just got. I didn't maintain contact after that. It was a culmination of different things, but the final straw was when she ripped up a poster she had bought me of some boy band I liked at the time. She thought it was funny to make me think she had given me a gift, only to take it away once I got excited about it. It was like 6th grade. BTW. I made a mistake of inviting a friend of mine to an event but forgot that someone she hated was there as well. She and her best friend were really pee about it and essentially cut me out of their lives because I was a toxic influence. There is more to it than that, but I won't go into extreme detail. My ex was my best friend. I told her everything that was on my mind out of the trust I had for her. We broke up when she had to leave to travel for work. I was okay with that, wished her the best and hoped to remain best friends. A few weeks later, she calls me in the middle of the night and keeps me up all night telling me that she never really cared about me, but was just using me for a place to stay, my prescription drugs, and to not feel alone. She also used all the insecurities and faults I confided with her to break my spirit by putting me down for all of them and calling me every insult under the sun. Now, I still try to be friendly towards her, but she still doesn't see how her actions hurt me nor understands how I can possibly still be affected by it a few months later. It's not the kind of hurt you can just shrug aside and move on from in a matter of days. Instead, it's the kind of break of trust that affects all other friendships or interests. How the heck do I begin trusting someone after the last person I trusted completely used that trust to hurt me in such a way? Don't get me wrong. I still put myself out there and make attempts every day at finding something better. Just, that fear is still there overshadowing everything that I do. Don't let that awful human get you down. That's her crap, not yours. People who are healthy and happy don't make other people feel like that. Your happiness is your best revenge. Walk away and never look back. My friend and I talked about opening a business together sometime after we graduated. I was unable to find work in that specific subfield when I got out and he did. He made a new BFF at work and started the business with him shortly after I got back into the subfield that divided us. Still love the guy to death but just feel like I have a hard time talking to him because of bitterness jealously that he didn't wait for me. She could never have a mature, adult conversation or take responsibility when she was wrong. I let it slide in high school because we were young after all, but I got sick of it during college. I'd say something like, hey, when you did this I felt really left out and crappy. I'd really appreciate if you maybe didn't do that next time, and she'd get extremely upset and tell me it was all in my head and I needed to stop causing problems. Then she'd bring up my recent breakup to try and distract and hurt me. Once we got to 3 strikes of her doing that, I was done. Stopped talking to her and eventually deleted her from all social media. He reconnected with a long lost love. He had a GF at the time. They'd been together a few years, so he decided to just email her that it was over. I found out later it was an email she never used, so she didn't find out till later what happened. The new GF moved from Nebraska to live with us. She just smoked weed and watched TV all day and didn't get a job for like 3 months. She was also legit crazy. She'd cry all the time, blame crap on her endometriosis, and just generally be a worthless annoying bee. My friend and I had to front most of the bills, and tensions were building. I finally blew up after he called me out on having friends over late while they were trying to sleep. So I'll let him have it, saying how he has no right to tell me anything since his mooch GF has just been taking up space in our apartment with no job and no desire to get one. He said that that's his problem, not mine. Except it was because I still had to pay the difference most of the time. So we had a crazy argument and almost got in a fist fight. It all ended because I just wanted to know if they were gonna move out, break the lease. So I downloaded a text bomb app to spam him 100s in like 10 seconds. We had one last confrontation, and we broke our lease like 7 months early. Luckily that didn't bite me in the butt. Last I heard is they moved back to Nebraska, had some kids, and went crazy religious. Sounds like Nebraska. He started acting stupid over the course of dating someone in our group of friends. They broke up, and now he's just a prick. After 15 years of friendship, I went through a horrible situation with my husband. Drugs, infidelity, etc. Anytime I tried to talk to her about it I got wow and colon replies. I dropped everything for this woman so many times, going to hospitals, late night calls when she was in a crisis, wiring her money when she overdrew her account, her divorce. Paid 98% of the time when we went out to eat. One day I just said, what the frick am I doing here? She was a complete narcissist, all along. Serious, people who stopped talking to a very close friend. What was the reason? Money. Made the mistake of lending $10k plus to my best friend to help keep his business afloat. Tried to stick by the old saw. Don't lend, just give. If you get it back, great. Time passed. Fortunes changed. I needed that money back. He was in a very solid position to return the favor, and didn't. My friend would always get so angry about the pettiest things. Any perceived wrongdoing would make him avoid all contact with you. I saw that he did this with everyone, including other friends, parents, grandparents, girlfriends, and just about anyone else he met. Well, one day he got mad at me about something. I can't even remember what it was. He decided to cut contact, and when he tried to re-establish it months later, I didn't speak to him at all. I was almost always the butt of the joke. At one point I had enough and asked my friend to stop. He didn't. This went on for a while and eventually I just stopped talking to him. I told one of my closest guy friends that his girlfriend was cheating on him. I sat him down and told him. He went to confront her. She found me later that night out at the bars and accused me of trying to steal him away from her, which was stupid because I was out with my girlfriend at the time. He hasn't spoken to me since that night. It's been 3 years and they live together now. We used to hang out every day, go fishing, do yoga, and play video games. I miss him. Just shared this in another thread, but my best friend and my boyfriend drunkenly fricked in a hot tub and I walked in on them. He was blacked out. When I saw them, he looked me straight in the eyes and didn't even process. She saw me and the look of shame on her face before she continued fricking him told me all I needed to know. For months and months I dreamed about her, not him, at least weekly. In my dreams I would be walking around somewhere and run into her and hug her before remembering what she did. And then she would evaporate and I would be left with this deep seething dream rage. I completely cut her out of my life. Full stop. But then, through a series of college housing office fuck-ups and bureaucracy, I was forced to live with her and 2 other girls. I tried not to be petty or to make things uncomfortable for my other roommates, so I would occasionally make cold but civil small talk. After we moved out of that immensely awkward living situation, I never spoke to her again. I have no idea what she's doing now. We were best friends. Then one day it ended. One of my closest friends started bragging one day about the company he worked for. Their business model: 1. Buy rights to some gay pee. 2. Release it on BitTorrent. 3. Track who torrents it. 4. Send them letters threatening to sue them publicly unless they settle privately for a few $1,000s. 5. Collect money from anyone who pays, then cancel other lawsuits. At the time, it sounded questionably legal at best. Since then it's blown up in their faces and they're probably going to flee the country or end up in jail. Either way, finding out that he thought this was a legitimate business model told me that it was time to let that friendship go. For the curious, the company name was Prindar and the whole debacle is fairly well documented online. Holy crap. I didn't even finish reading your post and immediately thought of Prindar. I loved reading about their courtroom shenanigans on Ars Technica. Because the words, "Now that I'm rich I can do what I want, that's why I cheated on my wife," actually came out of his mouth. We both became successful at the same time and it changed him in an awful way. He became entitled, greedy, borderline sociopathic, and it was disgusting. I hate to say it, but he was probably already those things before he became rich. I still don't know. We were best friends for over 10 years with on-off periods when we didn't talk as much, of course, and for the last months of it had been talking literally from the moment we woke up until we went to sleep. She'd tell me everything. I'd tell her everything. We'd talk up until 7 a.m. some weekends without ever realizing. Then one day she just said she grew tired of me and needed some time away, that the reason we were friends for so long is that we take time off each other. One week she says she loves me and I'm one of the most important people in her life. The other she's sick of me. It was a couple months ago and still hurts. She was the one person that got me. It's been a lonely couple of months. Whenever we hung out, it was always this ridiculous game of her trying to find time to hang out. I would tell her in advance to hang out. She'd reschedule last second. Every time we hung out it was this stupid situation to get her to do anything outside of her house. We lived not even 1 block away from each other and she made the friendship feel like we were traveling miles to hang out. I gave up one day after she blew me off to reschedule on my birthday and days after. So I messaged her saying I don't think we should hang out anymore, blah blah, and we didn't. I'm not the only one that had this issue with her. I tried to make it work but she made it difficult. Don't really miss her, to be honest, since we rarely hung out towards the end. I had a 25-year friendship with a girl like this, and bonus, she was passive aggressive about everything and perpetually late with crappy excuses. Had to cut her loose. I realized I was the only one reaching out with plans to see certain people. I stopped making all the plans and they very quickly disappeared. Got new better friends shortly after. I feel your pain. Online hug. She was a very good friend for 15 years, but she was such an Eeyore. 15 years of listening to how terrible her life was took its toll. She always insinuated that I couldn't understand her struggles because she was a single mother. Newsflash, I was raised by a single mother. Since her life was so hard she always needed favors help that she never returned. I do miss her, but I don't miss the emotional exhaustion. Perfect term. I definitely had an Eeyore in my life. You did better than me though. I stuck around long enough to experience her try to make me as miserable as she was. After college, I went home to find my family a wreck. Mum was sick, dad was out of work, brother was self-destructing, bills hadn't been paid in months. I waded in hip deep and began shoveling crap. Burnt through my savings, maxed out my credit cards, took whatever work I could find. My friends went on to PhDs, marriage, careers. When I saw one of them in a short video on the Discovery Channel website, talking about a fossil he had just found, I lost it. Broke into tears. There they were living my dreams. I didn't want to become resentful of them, to hate them for their success. And anyway, who wants a friend with nothing but misery to share? You're getting married? That's great. My mom just lost her leg to gangrene. So, I stopped reaching out. I faded out of their lives. Most of them were busy and had moved cross country, so it was an easy break. 1. My roommate in college for several years kept going out of his way to stay in touch. I ended up asking him to stop worrying about me, told him things were bad for me and my family and that wasn't something I wanted to share. Holy crap, that must have been tough as heck. You're a hero, though, so you've got that going for you, which is nice. All the best to you, your family, and your dreams. She always leaned on me for support, but never did anything to improve her life. When I shared things with her, she criticized me constantly and wanted me to pull back from taking risks. It just got frustrating dealing with somebody who wasn't growing at all and wanted me to stay the same. We just lost common interests, and that's the hardest part. You don't hate each other, you actually kind of want to like each other, but you have nothing much in common anymore. I have a friend and we mutually got bored of each other, not really sure why. I realized that our friendship was built on the fact that we were bookish people in a school full of athletically inclined folks and had very little actually in common. We would hang out in the library every day and I even started going to her family's church. We started drifting apart in high school after she got really gothish and turned into some weird mashup of a Legbird and a Tumblr kin before Tumblr was even cool. The cheerleaders were automatically horror bags. Never mind that most of them were actually the sweetest girls I'd ever met. The boys in our class were all dumb and worthless, because apparently enjoying football and not grasping chemistry the first time around makes you less than human. I think the final straw came during our senior year, when she shouted S at the dance team when they were doing some dance. It was during winter festival and the entire school was there. It wasn't edgy, it was just freaking embarrassing. I got up and moved to the other side of the auditorium and haven't spoken to her since. He went kinda crazy. We were very close quite fast, both fans of various geeky pursuits and drinking beer and having a good laugh. He was a clever, witty guy, so we had fun setting the world to rights, playing Warhammer and video games. But then he had an affair with someone he worked with. He was married and started becoming very difficult, slightly manic. He left his wife, but his big on the side ended up marrying her fiancé as planned, though they still saw each other. I was so sick to the death of it all, being so morally depressing and murky. Then he asked out my ex-girlfriend, bearing in mind he'd been a great help during my breakup. That was that, and haven't spoken to him since. My former best friend stopped talking to me because of my depression. I became very clingy with him because I was isolated for a few months due to moving temporarily. I was also super unstable and kept hurting myself. had panic attacks every day, experienced delusional thinking where I thought everyone thing was trying to hurt me, etc. He asked for some space, but I couldn't give it to him in my extremely irrational mindset. He finally stopped talking to me for good after I attempted suicide and was hospitalized. Just last night, I dreamed he called me and wanted to be friends again after all this time. About a year now. I still miss him. He just stopped talking to me. It started gradually. We would talk less and less as months would pass. One day, as I was leaving his house, I playfully quipped to him how I would see him in a couple months. As I walked up the driveway, this thought creeped into my head. I wonder if this is the last time I will see him. I just had that feeling. Now he won't even answer my texts or anything. Haven't seen him in 8 months. I miss him every day. She and I were born 2 days apart. We went to elementary school, junior high, senior high and later to university together. She was my best friend. Then she fell ill with anorexia. It started somewhere in the end of junior high. Me and a few friends went to talk to the PE teacher about it. It's being taken care of. Her mother's been notified. Just be supportive, they told us. It got worse during senior high. She kept losing more and more weight. When we graduated, her legs were almost as thin as my arms. After she moved out of her mother's place and started renting her own apartment, it got even worse. She was basically a walking skeleton. I tried to be there for her, but the anorexia just made her the most vile person. People who have never dealt with anybody who has a serious ED don't understand how much it changes one's personality. Food, counting calories, restricting them and exercising became everything to her. The few times she wanted to go to a restaurant became trips that lasted for hours as she tried to change absolutely everything about her meals. Most of the time the only thing she would agree to do with me was jogging at a snail's pace for hours and hours. Wanna go to a pub and have a drink? Nope. A few days trip somewhere? Can't go. Might have to eat something she wasn't expecting. Basically she was planning every day ahead, what she would eat at some exact time, how exactly long jog she would do that day, yada yada. I tried for 5 years, then I gave up. It was too emotionally draining. She didn't give a crap about me anymore. She just used me to help her pretend that she was still okay and had friends. Haven't talked to her in almost 6 years now. I moved to another city soon after we fell apart. From what FB tells me, it seems like she's doing a little better now, but I don't know if I want to resume our friendship. I feel like I've moved on. Time just passed us by really. We were best friends up until he moved. Around high school, neither of us had a car, so we only got to visit him once during those years. After high school, I tried hanging out with him like old times, and we did joke around like we used to, but I noticed for him it just wasn't the same. I told him if he wants to hang out, to just let me know. It's been a couple years since that convo. I still consider him a close friend, because of all the laughs we had. It's just that I have a different connection with him now. Moving makes it hard to stay close to people. I would know. High school changes everyone too. Sometimes you're only friends with people because you see them 5 times a week. I haven't talked to anyone from high school since the day I graduated. That sucks though, man. His relationship with drugs was unhealthy and none of my advice or effort seemed to help. I had to cut him off to send a message and save myself. I had to do this twice. It was always me initiating the plans to hang out. I did a test. I wouldn't call him to hang out for 30 days. He called me once. The first thing he tells me is that everyone else is busy. So, in 30 days he called once and I was the last resort. Me and my friend were basically lonely together and both had pretty bleak outlooks on life. We made each other more depressed and looked down on others together. I realized I didn't wanna be like that, basically an butthole, so I moved out of town and started a new life. Stopped talking to this guy while I had my new life. I got happier and started finding my self-esteem, seeing girls, etc. When I went home next summer and met my old best friend again, he had not changed at all, and I noticed right away how toxic his presence was. I never hung out with him after that, but still talk now and then on Facebook. He's still fairly depressed, but I feel as if I've gotten far enough in my personal development where I am not that affected by it anymore. This happened to me too. When I went away on vacation, I realized life doesn't have to be that way. Distance gave me perspective. I never went back. I told my friends I was going back to college and going to make something of my life, and they were offended. I think they didn't understand the word ambition. Keep improving yourself. You're on the right track. We drifted apart. I've always been energetic, a bit unstable and always looking for new stuff to try. He wasn't like that. We got into the same class in what's equivalent to high school, where I met some very extroverted guys I became friends with, and their extroversy helped my social problems, so we grew close. Fast rewind 3 years to last year of high school. I got a severe depression and things just went south. I got a bit messed up in drinking and medicine abuse, and he just stayed the same. As time passed by, we saw each other less and less, and when I found out I was going to college 200 kilometers away from our hometown, things just went quiet. We spoke the other day though. He is good but pretty much same old same, while I have changed a lot. Best friend for years growing up. Hang out every single day and play in the woods, ride bike, skateboarding, play videos games. We slowly started growing apart. We developed different interests over the years, and now I haven't talked to him in ages. I was friends with a guy for 15 years. Really close. Went to college in the same town across the state. When I graduated law school and opened my practice, he asked me if I could draft him a deed and record it, as he was buying the property next to him, in cash. He lived in a town a few hundred miles away, but I took care of it, sending priority mails back and forth. My expenses were almost $100, all told, but in the end I asked him for $350 just to cover the time and my costs. He stiffed me on the money and never spoke to me again. And it's been years now. A 15-year friendship over $350. What a shame. He found a woman. Totally changed all his opinions to match hers, and vegan, judging friends for disagreeing with her political and social opinions. I guess I wasn't attractive enough to be his friend. I'm slightly overweight. He was thinner than a rail and thought he was an Adonis. He came from a wealthy family as I did not, and was working whatever job I could so I could buy supplies and clothes for school. And he thought he was a far more superior intelligence and was an indigo child. I really don't know why I hung out with him. He was nice at first, introducing me to new things, but he started to show his true colors. He was 18-19. Finishing high school and never worked a job in his life, and was always at odds with his parents who just wanted him to go out and do something. He ran away from home one night. My dad and I picked him up, and I ended up bringing him to work with me because my then boss needed yard work done around his property. My parents had a heart-to-heart with his parents, who were shocked I forced him to come to work with me, but told my mother, who then told me he wasn't going to be my friend for very long. And you know what sucker catfished me? He managed to create a ruse that was extremely elaborate and sophisticated on finding a boyfriend. I guess the goal was to make me jealous. Instead, he must have been upset that I was actually happy for him. After that, he blocked me via phone and any form of social media and never spoke to me again. Good riddance. She grew up into a person I didn't want to associate with anymore. We were best friends and neighbors, and from age 14-22 I spent almost every day hanging out with this girl. She ended up dating this butthole guy during that time, and eventually his mannerisms started to wear off on her. She was so funny and down to earth when we were younger, but as the years progressed, she became a vapid, shallow individual. It got to the point I couldn't have a conversation with her that didn't involve her telling me about the new thing she bought or what trip she was about to take. When I'd want to hang out, it had to involve spending crap tons of money. No more just having coffee and talking. There was no realness to our friendship anymore. It felt contrived. We both moved away and haven't talked to each other in a couple years. I lost all contact with my friends when I joined the military right out of high school. By the time I was getting out of the military, they all were graduating college. I didn't make many friends in college because I was older and they wouldn't let me live in the dorms for some reason, so I had to get an apartment off campus. By the time I was graduating college, all my high school friends were in careers and had kids. He stole from a mutual friend of ours right after saying he would never steal from us. The monetary value of what he stole wasn't that high, maybe $20 or so. but I can't be friends with someone who would blatantly lie to my face like that. We walked the road together for a few years. At some point the roads start to diverge because you both want to see different horizons or try different things. At first you'll make sure the paths cross regularly. You call each other for dinner, for a beer, for hanging out. It's great like old times, talking about the stuff you're both doing, the new things you're seeing and experiencing. Still, conversations and meetups become more and more irregular. You're both busy. When you do meet up, you notice conversations slowly turn to talk about them olden days rather than about the present. Because by this time you've grown so much apart that those olden days are the one thing you both share. And then, poof, you're out of each other's lives. No hard feelings either way. I hope you're doing great, buddy. She proved herself to be toxic and never really a good friend to begin with. We'd met in HS, so we're in each other's lives for about 15 years. There are multiple reasons that led up to me finally cutting off the frenemy, but the biggest one is that she made a pass at my husband while we were dating. He never told me about it until years later, and I was peeved because during the time it happened, she had succeeded in seducing one guy I had been casually seeing and made out with a different guy I had been talking to at a party. After each instance she would snivel and cry about feeling so pale compared to me, not wanting to trash a friendship. I gave her another chance as those other two guys weren't really anything special. I didn't confront her about the incident with my husband until after she had visited me in high. He actually didn't tell me about it until right before the visit, which was about 7 years after it happened. She had already booked her flight and he was going to be gone for work, so I decided to ride it out. She proved herself to be completely obnoxious during the trip, getting on my case for gaining about 20 pounds. Snooping through my internet bookmarks about jobs, criticizing me for wanting to sleep in past 8 o'clock, wanting to troll for a random guy to screw, the list goes on. I didn't speak to her for about a month until after she left, and we used to speak 1-2x a week. When I did pick up the phone, I laid everything out about her not being a supportive person, i.e., she used to play devil's advocate by defending the other person whenever I would rant about something instead of just being on my side. I'd been going to school full time and working full time for several years, so wanting to sleep in should have been understandable. And finally the incident with my husband. I told her I didn't expect her to remember it as it had happened before her accident. She was in a bad car accident and was on life support and had missing memories. But the fact that it happened wasn't acceptable, and my husband made it clear he didn't want her around, especially with how the visit had gone. To be honest, I didn't clearly say I don't want you in my life anymore. Rather, I just no longer answered her phone calls or emails after that conversation and denied her friend request on FB and blocked her 2 years after the conversation. When she wanted to be, she could be a good friend, but the crappy friend side of her came out so much more. I'm better off and have several closer friends now without all the drama. TLDR. Had a frenemy, took too long to get them out of my life. Now they are gone and I'm good. She told me she was a werewolf, no joke. Some people get way too caught up in Tumblr's hatred of what is normal and try to be more interesting. She got all into Otherkin, other genders, strange behavior, and she wasn't the same person anymore. Hey, we just kind of grew into very different people. We've known each other for more than 25 years, but I moved away almost 15 years ago. We kept in touch by phone for a long time. Then it was only me calling her on holidays or her birthday. Then, social media appeared. We both only post sporadically, but she's very different as a person than I am. Contact is now only happy birthdays exchanged on Facebook. It makes me a little sad, but I don't think we'd get along anymore, so I'm content to let our friendship putter out like this. I got my best friend in college a job where I worked. Turned out he was lazy as frick. Got caught sleeping several times, would show up late and leave early but falsify his timesheet so he still got paid, would break things and never tell anyone so he didn't get in trouble, and on and on. Meanwhile, I was busting my butt to make the business a success. Last I saw him, he was leaving the job but had a brand new car. He said, I had to buy it before I quit so I could put the income down on the credit application. Which is fraud, of course. After you lose all respect for someone, it's tough to be their friend. Every single time we used go out in a group, she'd go out of her way to spoil everyone else's night. Every single time. The night I stopped talking to her, she was trying to start an argument with me the entire evening. She then kicked me out her house at 5 AM and I came home to nasty messages on Facebook from her. I told her I was done with her crap and told her not to contact me again. Oh, also she had a creepy butt boyfriend who would get drunk and come on to me when she wasn't around. She didn't reach out to me when my house caught on fire and my family was displaced. I messaged all of my friends in one long text while the whole thing was happening, and she never responded. I lived in a small New England town, so word spread pretty fast about my house, because things like that never happened. When people asked her about what happened, she brushed it off and said it was no big deal, just a small brush fire and everything was fine. Well, yeah, no lives were lost, but we were homeless in a matter of minutes. So I was really hurt by that, because it seemed like a very despicable thing for someone to do, especially someone I had thought so highly of before and was best friends with for so many years. I moved to Texas recently, and she now goes to school here. She texted me asking if we could meet up. I said I wasn't interested. I don't regret anything. I don't need toxic people in my life like that, especially ones who aren't there for you in the most extreme circumstances. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.